So, good afternoon, everybody. We are into the state agency budget presentations. We will be busy from 1 to 4 at a minimum, depending on what kind of questions people have. And we're going to be starting off with the Department of Agriculture. And Commissioner, if you want to, and let me just see, I know that Representative Walker just got off of her judicial call. Representative France, are you on? Or Senator Minor? Seeing none right now. I'm sure that they are doing, everybody else is doing, and that is quickly moving from spot to spot. Commissioner Herbert, it's a pleasure to see you today. We have a couple of questions for you, but if you want to do a presentation, and then we'll get right into questions.
Thank you, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and all of the members and leadership of the Appropriations Committee and Subcommittee. We submitted our written testimony and a follow-up PowerPoint presentation on the agency, recognizing that time may be limited and the time may be best used for your purposes to jump into Q&A. Just for the record, I'm Brian Herbert. I'm the Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. With me today from the agency, we have Nathan Willison, who is the Director of Operations from the Department of Agriculture, Carol Briggs, who is our staff attorney at the agency, and Kaylee Royston, who is our legislative liaison. Many of these faces you probably recognize from previous years testifying before the Appropriations Committee, but I may call on any of them to assist with a response, and wanted to make sure that the committee members were aware they're here and joining us. So with that, Senator, I'll turn it over to you and let the conversation begin.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And we're going to ask a couple of questions that you can get to us through Madam Administrator relative to the number of positions that are open in the Department of Agriculture, how many people that you have that are able to retire by July 1, and how many applications do you have out for positions right now? Where are you on that? Getting those applications back in. We're trying to figure out how long is it taking from start to finish on applications. So that is.
Run through that very quickly if you would like, Senator.
Sure, go ahead.
We have currently 4 open positions that are posted through DAS. These are positions that have become vacant due to retirements or reconfigurations of some of what we're trying to do within the agency. And this is a forward thinking to our recognition that next spring we're looking at, or spring into summer, potentially 12 retirements. And so we are trying to plan ahead, think about what functionality those positions have, how we can best serve them, how we can ensure that we maintain the level of staffing that's required for us to support the responsibilities that we have.
Okay, thank you for that. And don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to put your hands up if you have any questions for the Department of Agriculture, for those of you who are streaming in right now. I do have a couple of questions. We were in a meeting yesterday with the talking about bills in the Appropriations Committee, and one of the bills was a grant for hydroponic farming. Do you have grants already available for hydroponic farming?
Yes, we saw that bill pop up. I'd be interested to work with the proponent or the committee on it. Currently, a hydroponic farm could be eligible for our farm transition grants, which are up to $49,999. And we have, over the course of my tenure here in the agency, reinforced the need to highlight and prioritize areas in agriculture. One of those areas is urban agriculture. So if an urban agricultural operation submits an application, that's considered a priority area. The other is food systems. And hydroponic farming, I think, could, depending on where it's geographically located, fit under urban ag, but also could contribute to our food systems given the number of harvests and the quick turnaround they have and the availability of that product for the local community. So if there's a conversation about expanding that program or creating a separate carve out, I'd just be careful that we want to make sure that we balance all of the types of applications that come in, but we do have priority areas that would impact hydroponic farming.
That's good to know. And also, we put in a grant last year, farm to table school grants. Could you let us know how that is working out this year?
It's actually working out very well. We recently released the funding application or the grant application period earlier this year. I believe last week, 13 organizations were noticed that they had been chosen for an award. This was an intensely competitive grant, which is great to see because it demonstrates the level and interest of farm to school programming. Just for everybody's awareness, this is the Connecticut Grown for Connecticut Kids program. Representative Terziak, this is the one we were in New Britain together to announce a few months back. We had about 60 applications requesting about $1 million in funding for CT Grown for CT Kids. So obviously, we only had $250,000 available for this year. And so we were able to grant awards to 13 organizations across each of the separate categories that were delineated in the statute. So it was not just for one type of program at one type of school. These were early childhood education centers. These were school districts. These were food service providers. We will be releasing, since this was only funded at a 2-year level, we will be releasing another round of applications in the spring for next school year, so that we can draw down those funds and get that programming implemented in as many districts as possible. But it was a great response that really demonstrates that there's a lot of activity and a lot of desire to do this work. Representative Gibson, I see you've popped on. Thank you for your work on this proposal last session. I think we can say it was a great success this year.
That's wonderful. And Bobby's happy about that. Representative Dathan, no more than 2 questions, everybody.
Thank you for the reminder, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. Sorry, I was a couple minutes late joining today. And apologies if you this question was already answered. But wanted to find out a little bit more. I know not material, but the senior vouchers, we had a lot of discussion about that in last year, and just wanted to make sure, one, that they were getting out to everybody, and what is the quantums around it in terms of numbers and amounts.
We can certainly get back to you, Representative, with the number of voucher booklets that were distributed. That is one of our most successful programs because we are able to use community partners across the state. I will say that the past 2 years have been slightly challenged in that program, similar to with our WIC Farmers Market Nutrition programs, only because there haven't been as many opportunities for distribution. So not as many folks are going to the senior centers or to the community organizations that would distribute them. Same with the WIC offices not being fully open for service. So that was the biggest challenge, but we have seen great redemption numbers on our senior program. And importantly, I think everybody should always keep this in the back of your mind. It's not only about the opportunity to feed Connecticut senior population. These are direct dollars that go to support Connecticut farmers. And so you get both ends of the spectrum where you're helping people buy local, healthy, fresh food, but then you're supporting Connecticut farmers by creating an automatic demand for their product. So it is a well thought of program, matches the federal dollars that we receive, and I'm very proud of the success and the outcome it has on families.
Representative Dathan, do you have a second question?
I do have a second question. My second question is similar in nature in terms of the WIC coupon. That is that a federal matching program, and what is the quantums around these programs? Because I see this as something that helps not just our farmers, but helps younger people to understand a little bit more about fresh produce and things like that.
Yeah, the WIC program, the WIC Farmers Market Nutrition Program, has the same as the senior component of federal funding and state funding. Last year, we were also able to direct some of the Arpa dollars to be available for that program. That program was severely challenged by the WIC offices being closed. And from a nutrition perspective, I do think it's important to acknowledge the federal government increased the WIC allocation by $35 per family member for fresh fruits and produce through their WIC card. And so that kind of drew down the demand to go to farmers markets and use the program vouchers at the market. We're still looking for ways to be creative and get those out. One of the issues is that you have to be income qualified and you have to demonstrate that you're on WIC. So it's not like the senior farmers market nutrition programs where we can go through a local community organization to get those booklets out. One of the things that we considered but weren't able to execute last year, but I'm hopeful that we can this year, is to partner with WIC over at the Department of Public Health in the Office of Early Childhood to identify essentially childhood daycares and nurseries that have high populations of WIC households, and do a drive-through distribution so we can directly get those booklets into the hands of eligible families. That's on the table, but we recognize we've got to get creative in order to get those booklets out to the families in need.
Great, thank you. I know Rep. Foster this is an issue that's near and dear to her heart, so I will chat to her and find out if there's things that we could do to make this more successful. But thank you for your answers. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Dillon, 2 questions.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner, again, for your efforts on the food box program, which I believe was very helpful to Bridgeport and New Haven that I know of, and maybe others. I'm concerned about WIC as well, and we talked about it last year. The participation, could you get back to us after today and see if there's a breakout by region of where the participation, whether the issue is transportation? Because I see in the city I live in that the participation seems to vary by parts of the city. We want to help the babies, and so if there is an issue with outreach, we need to talk about it. And as I recall, there has historically been a much lower participation in WIC than in the senior voucher. And the WIC, it actually started as a maternal and child health program, which we expanded, of course, but we don't want to leave the maternal and child health as sort of the stepchild of the program. And I guess the other component of the participation is outreach and support to the growers. I know in the early days that it really took a lot of education and a whole season to learn that you had to grow something different for different populations. And there was a lot of excitement about opening up new markets to farmers who then had to learn how to grow all those things. Do we do that now? Do we reach out to the farmers or to the growers and talk about individual products and support that they can have to cultivate those crops?
So thank you, Representative Dillon, and great to see you again. Next year, maybe we could do this at one of the farmers markets in New Haven, like we had that nice visit at the beginning of the year. Just to quickly mention, it wasn't in our submitted testimony, but you did bring up the Farm to Family Food Box program. And I think it's really worth highlighting and noting that when we were tasked at the agency to help with the food response in the state, the Farmer to Family Food Box Program, which is a USDA program that had no involvement from the state agency or across the nation, that we stepped in to help coordinate the logistics, the delivery, the distribution points. And I'm very proud to say and thankful for the team at the department for their work and the partner organizations that distributed these food boxes. We were able to distribute through 44 different partner community organizations 1.2 million food boxes. That's a very significant effort for a project that didn't receive any additional funding or staffing or other resources with a community that we quite honestly didn't have great connections to. But we were able to put it all together, and I think that's a significant victory for combating food insecurity across the state. With regards to different growing projects or products, that would probably defer to Yukon Extension, who does a significant amount of outreach on that sort of effort. We do host regular meetings with our certified farmers markets, which are the markets that are eligible to receive the WIC and senior farmers market nutrition programs. And we strongly encourage them to continue talking about the value of those programs to their other farmers markets that aren't certified. The Food Policy Council, which I chair, has identified this as expanding the SNAP availability, WIC and farmers market nutrition program access as one of our top priorities. And we're working with and hoping to continue to work with Hartford Food System, which received a USDA grant to create a Connecticut Farmers Market Collaborative. There is no collaborative or organization for all the farmers markets in the state. They're all individual. We don't necessarily regulate them. They may be regulated by the local Department of Health for health standards, but it's not like they all have to register with us and be held to some sort of standard. So we don't have great communication tools or the stick to compel them to act in a certain way or not. But we're hoping that with this farmers market collaborative that should be getting off the ground in the near future, that we'll have better access to more Connecticut farmers markets.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up there, not to forget whether we have any information on the differences in participation rate by region or by town, so that we can understand where the barriers might be and whether it's the food that's available at the market, which is always an issue, and the cost, or whether it's transportation, whatever the issue might be. That could be really helpful if you could provide that.
We can get that back for you.
Thank you, Representative Dillon. Any further questions?
No, Madam Chair, thank you.
You're welcome. Senator Hartley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner. Thank you for being with us. So first of all, I just want to commend your leadership and the department through, this last year, but through all of this COVID. And we learned how pivotal ag is, not just to the economy, but to every one of our citizens and constituents. Could you comment, Commissioner? USDA is in the offing to have a purchase of fresh produce. I'm wondering, what that might be, when it will be, and then, of course, how we get this through and into our communities.
Yeah, great question. And the local food purchase agreement program through USDA was made available or was released late in 2021. We have been working internally on developing a program And we will be releasing a comment period and also essentially an application period. It's my goal, I'll knock on wood here, that goes out this week. We'll release the plan and allow different community members to comment on the program that we've come up with. The sketch of it right now is about $1 million to Food Bank, or Connecticut Food Share rather, to purchase Connecticut grown goods directly. They are the largest emergency food distribution outlet in the state. We have 1.76, I should say, available. I'm sorry, no, that's not true. That's available for the tribes. 40% of the 4.4 million allocation is dedicated to federally recognized tribal nations. So we have the balance of that. But our goal is to create a couple of different tiers that community organizations, food aggregators, food hubs, it could bid at between, say, $250,000 up to a $500,000 tier, and they would have to demonstrate how they would get that food out into their community. The priority would be on purchasing local Connecticut grown produce. An additional priority is on purchasing from historically underserved producers, which is identified as one of USDA's program priorities. So minority farmers and or female-led farmers could participate under that. And then have them demonstrate to us how they could distribute this out into the community. As part of that broad push would be an opportunity for farmers to essentially sign up and say that they would be willing to participate and offer the opportunity for organizations to purchase food from them, so that we can do a good job of connecting the aggregator and the local farmer. That's generally a challenge in the food system, and we want to step into that. Long story short of it would be on July 1, we would like to have this program and all of its contracts executed and have the Connecticut grown food available for distribution. So I know it seems like we're in February and we're talking about a July 1 start date, but we have mapped out the different data points and benchmarks that we need. We think that's very doable. And if we can move quicker than that, we certainly will.
Senator Hartley, you're muted.
So, sorry. Thank you, Commissioner. So is there some kind of a listing of our minority and underserved farmers that exists? I mean, I'm curious in my own district who they might be, where they are.
There isn't, and this is the challenge, right? We use our USDA National Agricultural Statistics Service to generate, the data that we have available in Connecticut, but we don't actually regulate every single farm or have a touch point with every single farm. We would use a number of different local organizations that we've developed relationships with to get the word out and encourage them all to apply and to express their interest in participating.
Yeah, and that's always the challenge of getting the information and the message out, the touch points. And so my second question, Madam Chair, is, and it's about this endeavor, and it's also really about our senior farmers markets. Workforce being what it is, it's a real challenge to get people working in these endeavors, like in every sector. And so we're finding that we can't do the hiring we need to do. Therefore, there has to be efficiencies that are realized in order to meet, on the other end, the escalating demand. And also, to your point earlier about, for example, WIC offices being closed. Well, even on farmers markets, there were fewer foot traffic. People just weren't coming out. And so it's more like we have to meet them, in their neighborhood, at their senior center, that kind of thing. And so distribution models, I think, are going to be key in conjunction with this whole conversation. And we have this opportunity with, of course, the Arpa money. Do you see us doing any kind of an initiative with regard to that, building a distribution model?
So the local food purchase program does identify, essentially what you're talking about, and that first investment to strengthen the food system for the out years. That this is a 2-year program as it was currently designed, but it's essentially an opportunity to build some of that infrastructure and networks that will last beyond it. And I use the term build infrastructure, but it's really the relationships. It's not physical bricks and mortar buildings. I think they expressly said that was not eligible. But I think we have the opportunity to look at cold storage, refrigerated vans, and other types of infrastructure that would allow for this program to last beyond its 2-year window.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to supporting and working with you on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator. Senator Lopes.
Thank you. Hello, Commissioner. How are you?
Afternoon. Doing well, yourself?
Not bad. One quick question, just something that you mentioned in testimony regarding animal seizures, which we've seen on the news. How often do these happen? What kind of financial strain does it put on your agency?
Thank you, Senator. This is one of the areas that doesn't get as much attention or recognition, but a critically important component of what we do at the agency between our animal control unit and our ag marketing and inspection representatives. We've had more animal seizures over the past 2 years than in recent memory. Some of those are still pending in court for a number of different reasons. But what we are finding is that, generally speaking, the costs associated with the animals are higher. The duration that we are responsible for their well-being is longer. And so it does create a challenge for the agency to move money around in order to cover the costs. Generally, we try to draw this down from our OE. We do have the animal cost recovery account that is in the budget. We try to keep that balance pretty healthy, just in case there is another thing around the corner that we're not aware of, and so OE is kind of our first cost. But just to give an example, on one of these recent cases, for 7 dogs for 30 days, it was about $10,000 of incurred costs. And so, these are not, this is not a volunteer organization when it comes to those actual costs. We were able to find homes. I think we have one animal that has not been placed at a rescue at this time. But between vet bills, feeding costs, we're able to pursue recovery at a tune of $15 per day. But the reality is that, for some of these animals that have been seized and taken into the custody by the state, the previous owner either can't be identified or doesn't have the resources to pay that $15 per day per animal. And so it's not like we are able to be made whole, and those are generally after the fact. And so, what we are incurring the costs and caring for the animal for a while before we're able to see any of those dollars flow back to the agency.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Senator Lopes. Representative Gibson, you had your hand up before. Do you have a question or comment?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. How are you?
Good.
Good. Hi, Commissioner. How are you, sir?
Doing well, thanks. Good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. I've two questions for you. I got on a little bit late. You were talking about WIC and offices being closed. Could you just give me a brief explanation of what was going on with that and how we're going to fix it? How are you going to get those offices back open? Because as we know, a lot of those offices serve communities of color, which really need those services.
Representative, we're not responsible for WIC. We just work with them on that farmers market nutrition program. I would save that question for DPH.
Oh, that's right. Thank you for that. And then the second question had to do with the farmer school bill that we passed last year.
Yep.
All right. Do you have a record of, I'm sure you do, which schools were chosen, how they were chosen, a list of those schools, so we can have some data as to what schools are actually doing it and how they're doing?
Yes, and Kaylee, actually, if you could send Representative Gibson over the press release that we sent out, I think it was last week, if not the week before, But it did list the 13 awardees, and I don't think it listed the amounts, but in the districts that they are in. And you may not have been on when I had previously mentioned this, but we had nearly 60 applications requesting almost $1 million in funding for the program. So there is a great desire out in the community to do farm to school programming, and we were able only to, we're capped at $250,000 minus some admin for the agency. So it was a very competitive grant, and I was very pleased with the programming that we're going to get out of this. We're also going to be re-releasing the application period for next school year later this spring. Given that it's a 2-year program, we want to make sure that we can take advantage of the dollars that are available and get those out into the towns across the state. And now that we know that there's this huge pent-up demand, I'm sure we'll have another highly competitive round of applications.
So after the 2-year grant, those schools who received the grant the first time, will they automatically be given a second 2 years, or can they not apply? How's that? How's it done equitably so that other towns can get a fair shot at it?
Yeah. So the program was only funded for 2 years through Arpa.
Right.
And so we generally have a cooling off period that if you received a grant 1 year, you can't come back the next year for another grant. Just to do what I think you're trying to get at, to make sure that everybody has a fair chance, and it's not just the same people using these dollars for essentially operating expenses. That's our way to try to make sure that the dollars get out to as many organizations as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Kaylee, just so you know, please send that to Sue Keen, and she can send it out to everybody.
I would dream of doing absolutely nothing else.
Thank you. Representative Reyes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner. Good afternoon, sir. I just wanted to touch base on, there was 2 things. Representative Gibson did touch base on the WIC. The second thing I was interested in is the urban agricultural programs, and in particular also the grants and possibilities of actually expanding and covering Waterbury with the possibility of being in the next round of planting trees down here in my concrete jungle down here.
Well, I will say that planting trees would fall under DEEP in their programming. Hartford has the Knox Foundation, which is a great model that has a grant, receives a regular, I don't know if it's a grant or just a line item in the city of Hartford's budget at this point, but they're the ones who are responsible for planting and maintaining all of those trees. Great operation. With regards to urban agriculture, as I had previously mentioned, our farm transition grant has some, does identify urban agriculture as a priority area, as it does for food systems. So those are 2 ways that we can use that grant to direct these state dollars into different urban communities and smaller organizations. The other thing that I failed to mention at the beginning of the conversation is recognizing that urban agriculture is such an important topic and opportunity in Connecticut. We led and have initiated a conversation through a series of webinars with FEMA, USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, the Connecticut Agricultural Experiment Station, and the College of Agriculture, Health and Natural Resources. This is a 5-month series. We have only done our January program, but the goal is that we'll do 5 different programs to highlight different opportunities and success stories for urban agriculture across the state. The first program, and Kaylee, maybe you can get out the webinar, the recorded webinar out to the group on this, was just a general overview about the different organizations and some of the programming that's available. And the rest of the series is going to be more focused on different specific programs. And importantly, recognizing that not everybody loves to listen to bureaucrats like me talk about these programs. They're going to be stories from the field, organizations that have been successful, and to share their story and how they were able to overcome the challenges to be successful. And not only is it a way for us to share out information, but it is also a way to build a network of community in the urban agriculture sector, where people have a chance to hear what's going on around the state and connect with them offline. Other states working with FEMA have not done this sort of programming. They've kind of done a one and done 60-minute thing, and I recognize that this needs to be an ongoing conversation, not just us talking at a group for one evening.
Commissioner, thank you very much for that input, and I would like the commission to continue to keep me in the loop, because I am very interested in expanding in that particular area here in Waterbury. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative Reyes. Kaylee?
I just had a quick comment for Representative Reyes, only because I know you're speaking to DEEP later today. I think you're talking about their urban forestry climate change grant, which did the grants, and that does fall under DEEP. So if you wanted to just take note and ask them about it as well, I wanted to make sure you had the right grant in mind.
That's the one. Thank you very much.
Perfect.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Thank you very much. Commissioner, as you can see, the interest continues to grow in the Department of Agriculture. I'm hoping it continues like that, because it's a very small but powerful state agency with a lot of really good things in it. So we appreciate you coming on. Do you have any further comments, sir?
Just to thank everybody for their comments and questions and interest in our programs. I'm very proud of the agency and the work that we do. And so it's great to be able to highlight some of these stories for the committee members. If anybody has any follow-up, I know we've got some follow-up to get over to Administrator Keene. If anybody has any additional questions, Kaylee is more than always available, and we'll do the research and get back to you on your specific questions. So please feel free to take us up on that opportunity. And if you have thoughts or suggestions for different ways we can use our programming, we're all ears too. We recognize that we want to be as flexible and dynamic as possible to take advantage of the limited dollars we have and the impact that they can have out in the community.
Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
You as well.
Up next is the Commissioner from the Department of Housing. Commissioner, I see you on there. Hi, Commissioner, how are you?
Good afternoon, Senator.
If you want to make a few brief opening comments, I know a lot of people have a lot of questions for you, so if you go ahead.
Good afternoon, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative Francis, and member of the Appropriation Committee. I am Seila Mosquera Bruno, Commissioner of Housing, and with me I have two of my staff, Michael Santoro, Director of Planning, Research, and Housing Support, and Steve Delila, who is the Director of Individual and Family Support Programs. So we are here and we are open for the questions.
So I'm going to kick it off with a couple of questions. One, on Unite CT, a program that got somewhat of a slow start, complicated, getting information. Where are we on the, do we have an idea of the number of people that participated in Unite CT?
Yeah.
Where those people are from, and also how much money went out and how much money is left to go out?
Thank you, Senator Austin, for that question. We have paid 48,000 approved applications. We have deployed $218 million until today, and we are in the process of actually processing applications in the amount of $170 and change million. The total amount is about $4 million. $400 million.
And
$400 million.
And that $400 million, is that the end of the program, or is there more dollars still available?
That's the end of the program. We applied to Treasury in case they do have additional resources, but we don't know when they're going to make those decisions.
Okay, thank you for that. And we also ask from you to get to us through Madam Administrator the information relative to the number of positions that are open in your agency, the number of people that are eligible to retire but no later than July 1st, and where you stand on, do you have job applications out that that have people applying for that, and how long is it taking for those applications to be processed?
Thank you, Senator Austin, for that question. Right now, I have about 10 positions that are open. We had, for the retirees, we had 2 people that already retired, and we have 1 pending. How many applications to HR have been filed? We have 5, and we will be submitting another one. How long does it take? About 3 months, give and take.
Okay. Thank you for that. And you started a new program relative to foreclosures on single-family homes or homes for people on foreclosures. I'm wondering, how is that? Has that been kicked off? Where are we on that? And how is that being handled? And I remind my colleagues, I'm sorry, Commissioner, I remind my colleagues, don't forget to put your hands up when you have questions, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Austin, for that question. Yes, the program is called My City Connecticut. The Department of Housing is the recipient of $123 million from Treasury. We had to develop a plan. It was submitted to Treasury. It was approved a couple of weeks ago, and CHAFA will be administering the program on our behalf. The goal is that we will open up the portal by the end of March. If we can do it sooner, we'll do that. So far, we have been doing outreach. We have been talking to legislators, to community, to mayors, just to get feedback and making sure that if there are suggestions or anything that we can incorporate into our program, we can do that.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Representative Dathan.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. Nice to see you again. Wanted really just to dig in a little bit on the Arpa funding for the affordable housing. I know there's been a lot of discussion on that, and I just was wondering if you have sort of a census of the allocated funds, where some of these affordable housing locations are, in terms of making sure that we have access for as many people as possible. And, really want to make sure that we really are addressing this issue in a long term and not really on a short-term Band-Aid approach. Do you have that information to hand, or is this something you want to bring back to the work group to kind of dig into?
Thank you for that question. I just trying to just to understand, or if I'm missing the point, let me know. Our goal is to produce as many housing as we can, especially deeply affordable units. That is to serve those individuals and families that are between 30 and 50%, more or less about 20,000 to 35,000. Majority of the people that we served during the United City processes has been those individuals. About 70% were between 30 and 50%, people that were looking for subsidy for rents. So our goal is to maximize the resources that we have, the state resources with the federal resources, and some of the program with CHFA to produce as many housing units as we can everywhere. The towns, we are working with several small towns. We have been working with their plans for affordable housing, and we have several small towns that actually have been pretty active. We have some homeownership programs also involved in Litchfield, and we're also working with the cities. In some of the cities where they need to recapitalize and demolish some of the public housing to bring new opportunities for the families and to be in an adequate place with energy efficient, instead of having those units to be just a space to live. So Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get an understanding. So part of this 50 million is going to the Unite CT program. Other is going directly to supportive units that are already out there. Is that what I'm understanding?
This is for the production of new units, the 350. We do have other resources that we utilize, like the 4% tax credits with some federal resources at CDBG and also at home and the National Trust Fund. So we're trying to maximize and leveraging the resources that we have from both agencies.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative Dathan. So yesterday I was talking to Senator Lopes, actually last night, about the homeless shelters. Can you just give us a review on what's going on with you were pretty active with the dollars that went into homeless shelters. How many homeless shelters does the state have? And what are we generally doing for support in the homeless shelters?
Thank you, Senator Austin. We have been pretty active supporting our shelters and service providers. I'm going to ask Steve to just give us a little more information. He is dealing every day with our partners.
Great. Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Senator Austin. As it relates to the number of homeless shelters that DOH funds across the state, it's about 38 shelters with about 35 separate private nonprofit agencies. There are a couple of nonprofit agencies that operate more than one shelter across the state. We were very, very happy to receive that additional $5 million in the budget to assist homeless shelters in this year. So when that funding was announced, what we did is we got together with the shelters as well as the coordinated access networks to have them help us determine how the funding would be best utilized. Some of the issues that came up were that they really were intent on ensuring that there was enough staffing and coverage for the cold weather season. That was priority number one. And then after that was taken care of, priority number two was to give the remaining funding to those shelters. So once we were able to work that through, we did enter into contracts with some of our backbone organizations through the coordinated access networks who are now spreading that money out to those shelters. But the vast majority has gone to providing the support for the cold weather for this winter season.
And do you believe that there is enough funding in the FY23 budget to shore up the homeless hospitality shelters currently?
So once again, there is that additional $5 million that is appropriated for the second year of the biennium, which also we are very appreciative of. And I think once again, we'll go with that same process of meeting with the CANs and the shelters to determine what the needs are for the coming year. Clearly this past year, a lot of it was driven by COVID and the concerns, especially as Delta and then Omicron raised with the needs there. So I think we don't know exactly what's going to happen in the summer and the fall. Hopefully, I think everybody in this room would agree that we will get a little bit better off as it relates to COVID, which may allow us to shift those funds to a little bit of a different perspective. But we'll have to wait a little bit to see on that and really work with our partners to determine how best they think the money should be utilized.
Thank you very much. I know a couple of people have questions relative to that, but next up is Senator Hartley, followed by Representative Dillon.
Yeah. So, and we've got a number of questions here, but let me just be respectful of everybody's time. Commissioner, it's good to see you and your team, and thanks really for, shouldering through all of these last 24 months, but it's not over, unfortunately. Wish we could, say that we were on the other side of this. And so, Unite CT was a pivotal program, and like anything of its depth and breadth, it had its challenges in terms of lighting up and reaching our communities. And there's two very important sides of this. There are the people who are attempting to stay in their homes, and then there are the people who are attempting to pay their mortgages. And in my own district, I unfortunately have had situations where the landlords said, you know what, I'm just not going to rent my second and third floor because I have too many challenges when this happens, and we're losing good, affordable, quality homes in throughout the state, but in my area. My question though is, so we've used the program and we put in there the steps, but I'm worried about the evictions. And so I want to know what you see from the department, what you see down the road in the next 6 months. And, are we really managing this appropriately?
Thank you, Senator Hartley, for that question. It's good to see you too. So in the department, we still have another about $178 million that we do have to pay in process applications. We are working with the Right to Counsel. Thank you very much for that support to provide legal assistance to those that cannot afford a lawyer. And so it's not just one thing that we have to do. As I mentioned before, the majority of the people that apply for United T are our working poor, people that are between 30% and 50% of AMI, which they're making minimum wages, and one-time event will put them on the edge. So we are looking at ways to minimize that exposure. It's a combination of subsidies that we need, and we hope that we get more subsidy from the federal government. It's a combination of housing and production that we have. It's a combination of promoting the home ownership and get those that are in rental places to be able to afford a home and leave those units for those that need the most. So yes, to answer your question, we are working in all those angles that we can. It's not going to be easy. We also are trying to be mindful on the shelters. We provided support to one of the nonprofits in Hartford, and they acquired a hotel where they're going to provide not only is a shelter space, but it will be more like a transitional place where people actually get services, including in that same building. So they will have the mental health, they will have substance abuse treatment, and also vocational treatment to assist them in getting a job. So all those type of opportunities we're looking at and being able to support whenever we can, and promoting more not congregate shelter, but more in individual spaces, working with a couple of shelters to try to redefine how we provide emergency housing to those that are in need.
Yeah, thank you for that response, Commissioner. I guess my concern is to stave it off before we get into the shelter conversation, to keep people in their homes. That's the goal. We need the shelters, for the third leg of this challenge, if you will. But it's the beginning of this where we really, I think, have to focus, and it's about keeping people out of shelters. And so you talk about subsidies, and we had the federal tranches on that, but do we need more subsidies? Do we need more direct intervention to stop that instance where we're then having to talk about a shelter?
Yes, we do need more subsidy. It's just not possible to be able to build 80,000 units in the next 3 to 5 years, right? So we, as I mentioned before, it's a combination of subsidy. The Build Back Better had a lot of resources. We hope that something is passed so that we can get some federal vouchers in addition to the one that we have in the construction and the production of affordable units. And so it's that combination that we need to make sure that we tap into it, not just one thing that is not gonna help. And yes, the emergency rent was a Band-Aid because many people are still not back to work full time, and they will still have that need. But we will keep doing what we're doing, do research. We have a lot of data right now with UNICT that we actually can take a look in a little more intentional way to provide other services to these families.
Yeah, and so once again, right, the building of more units is obviously pivotal, but the here and now is to keep people in those housing units that they're in right now. And so when I talk about subsidies, I'm talking about, once again, being able to give families, individuals, the means to stay in, their home, their rent right now without being forced out of it. So, I mean, my priority is subsidies to that particular cohort.
I don't know that. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's a statement, but I'm just saying, I think that's the priority, then we don't have to get into, this emergency housing situation. I mean, keep people in their homes. Okay,
Right.
Thank you, Celia.
Thank you, Senator Hartley. Representative Dillon,
Thank
followed
you
by
very
Senator Lopes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner. Thank you for your work. That my concern may be similar to Senator Hartley's, I'm not sure, but I'm concerned about strategies that keep our current rental units available or promote home ownership. And I know that I've participated in a number of meetings with people who want to expand our current housing opportunities. But what I saw since March 2020 was a number of homeowners who might have rehabbed their home on the historic tax credit or just rehabbed it on their own, rented out 2 floors, or were living there on their own, and they started selling to large conglomerates, or it was almost as if it was the doctor's practices that were selling to hospitals because it was easier, so you don't have to manage, everything yourself because it's so complicated. And the other thing I've noticed, although it doesn't fit with every particular building, is people moving to Airbnb and taking their homes off of the rental market, so that well, a number of I don't know whether there are enough subsidies in the world to deal with what I'm looking at with the spike in rental costs that's happening all over, that can price people out. And I'm thinking of the young families too, who, would like to have a starter home. And I don't know if there's such a thing available in our state. I'm concerned about the erosion of the housing stock we had 2 years ago. And whether, would you be the lead agency on that? Because I know that there are a number of other agencies that are looking at protecting property owners and so forth. Or is there an informal work group of agencies that all deal with housing issues?
Thank you, Representative, for that question. I'm going to ask Michael if he can help me here. But the market is pretty bad for our families that we serve, right? The prices have just escalated. People moving from everywhere, and it's not only in Connecticut. And I was in Puerto Rico, and they were saying the same thing. And a lot of people are taking their homes out of the rental market to do Airbnbs, and it's just everywhere. On the group, Michael, if you can help me out with the rest of the question.
Certainly, Commissioner. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Dillon. In general, what we are seeing are dramatic effects on the housing market, both rental and ownership, across the country, not just here in Connecticut, and not just in our urban centers, but in our suburbs and even in our rural communities. I don't know that there is any one action that will address all of those issues. As the Commissioner identified earlier, the best approach, the approach that we try to take, is to combine resources on multiple forms of activity to try to address the various issues that come to play. as the commissioner pointed out, we have rental subsidies, both the emergency kind and the regular subsidy programs, both the state rental assistance and the federal Section 8 program. We certainly hope to get more of that along the Section 8 side. On the homeownership side, we have had a very strong and consistent set of homeownership programs through predominantly through the Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, both to help first-time home buyers as well as to deal with emergency mortgage assistance, people who are getting into trouble. We've now got My Home Connecticut, which is getting ready to be launched. That pilot did in fact launch. They got $12 million out on the street, and the remaining $110 million just hit our accounts this week. We'll be turning that over to CHAFA, and they'll be launching that program now that they actually have the money as quickly as possible. We speak regularly with members across the housing continuum, from the builders to the constructors to the realtors and brokers to the housing advocates and to the landlords. We're aware of the issues and we're trying to deal with them in as broad a methodology as we can. I hope that answers your question, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to chase that a little bit. I don't
just be careful because we are already over our time for this, and we have 3 more people that have questions. So if you can ask the question without making a comment about it, that would be great.
Well, if you could just provide those backup materials to us. I think I already made my statement, so there's a lot more to say about that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Lopes, followed by Representative Reyes.
Hello, Commissioner and Senator Austin. Thank you for bringing up the homelessness issue that we discussed yesterday. Just a clarification, in terms of the homelessness providers, the $5 million last year, $5 million extra coming this year, very helpful. But that was always seen to me as a stopgap measure just to keep the industry alive during the end of the pandemic, kind of like filling a pothole, but not addressing the underlying issue that the entire industry is underfunded at a large scale at a time when the amount of homelessness is increasing and getting worse. Please clarify my assumption.
Senator Lopes, yes, so the $5 million is being used for the shelters, and it will be temporarily. What we are doing to come up with a plan that is sustainable and looking at the ways that we're trying to move people from the shelters to housing, to permanent housing. We have hired a consultant that is going to help us out with looking at the way that the shelters are being, the function of the shelters, because right now I met with all the shelters across the state and everybody came out with the staff, lack of staff like everybody else, right? And also that when they train staff, people steal people from each other's. So what we're doing is that we have the consultant is going to be working with a core group of the shelters to come up with a plan and to really look at the need of what can be sustainable, whether it's sharing professionals at one level and not trying to steal people from each other, and provide those professional people that are more costly, whether they can share those. So we don't know. The work has started, I think this week is going to start. Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have a core group of providers, shelters, because we want them to be part of this and come up with a plan that we can really look at how much we're going to need to be able to maintain and sustain the shelters.
I understand that, and my fear, of course, in the Housing Committee is, yes, the pandemic's winding down, but we're about to be crushed by what the other representatives were talking about, which is an increase in foreclosures, an increase in evictions. Even with the Rights Council and these other things we put in, there is going to be an increased number of people losing housing, or at a time when there is no housing available. I'm even concerned that if we created more RAP certificates and more assistance, is there even housing that we can access if we had the money to put people in units? I am struggling with constituents that come to me, senior, disabled, have not paid their rent in 2 years, got help from Unite CT, but that's gone. And now they're going to get evicted or they're going to get foreclosed on. And where do they go? And everywhere they ask, every housing authority, every assisted living has a 2 to 3 year wait. What are we going to do with these people? It's going to be an increase in people that are homeless and needing extreme services. And, you know, I understand that we have a plan to try to put this, the best foot forward, but without money, what are we going to do? Do we need housing? Do we need actually units available? Or do we need more certificates and ways to help people with rent?
It is all of the above. And for the foreclosure, I mentioned that we're going to start a program that we have over $110 million to prevent foreclosure with families. And that will start at the end of March.
Okay. Well, I'm still concerned. I mean, I'm asking Senator Austin and Representative Walker, excuse me, for more money to get more rental assistance certificates. And is that the way to go? Is that something we should be doing?
Was that to me or to Senator Austin?
No, that's to you. That's you. He already asked me last night. He didn't like my answer though. But it's a valid concern.
Yes.
And just so everybody knows, we are now 10 minutes beyond the end of this hearing with housing, and we have labor and another 6 committees after that, 6 agencies after that. So Commissioner, if you could enter, Senator Lopes is saying, do you need more money for RAP?
We need more production. We need more subsidy. Yes.
Okay, thank you. We'll talk further, I'm sure. Thanks for the time.
Representative Reyes, followed by Representative Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner, good afternoon. I want to follow the thoughts of some of my colleagues have already mentioned. I am concerned about the United CT running out of money, and I would like to consider adding more funds to that. That's one of my big concerns. That now we're getting down to the people that really need it because they're the last ones to find out because they're on the lower tier of information. So I think that that this homelessness situation is going to be very grave. So I'm advocating for increased funding for United CT and for that particular program, number one. And number two, having the largest homeless shelter in the state of Connecticut here in my district, I will be advocating for a lot more funding for that as well. So you don't need to answer now. We're going to continue the conversation. Just keep me in the loop. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Reyes. Representative Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Madam Commissioner.
Hello.
Hi, I'll be really quick. Quick question. Senior housing. I'm getting a lot of calls for seniors looking for housing, can't find housing. Can you just give me like a quick report on senior housing, where we are with it? Do we need more funding? Your thoughts?
Can I ask Michael, could you just respond to that question since you're involved in that?
Certainly. Thank you, Commissioner. And again, Madam Chairman, Representative Gibson. Elderly housing is something that we at the department continue to produce when we are asked. It is an eligible request for funding through our development engagement process. If you have development opportunities, we want to hear about them. We have, in this budget cycle, we're getting an additional $50 million of ARP specifically for production, some of which could be targeted to lower income households, including the elderly, the disabled, et cetera. We are spending upwards of $30 million a year in state bond dollars for housing preservation, which includes a significant portion of our elderly housing, both our rental housing for the elderly and congregate housing for the elderly programs are both seeing dramatic increases in investment by the state to preserve the units that we have. We are supportive of the federal government's initiatives to reinvest in the HUD 202 program, which is specifically targeted at producing elderly housing. We supported 2 202 projects in the last HUD round. We are looking at hopefully supporting some additional projects when HUD announces its next 202 funding round. So if you got a developer who wants to build, have them reach out. We'd be happy to talk to them.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Madam Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Gibson. Senator Kushner, you had your hand up. Do you have a question?
I took it down because of the time limitations on this meeting, and my thoughts have already been expressed by others. Thank you.
You're welcome. Representative Walker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very quickly, good afternoon, Commissioner. I'd like you to bring to the group, to the working group, I want to know what you got in ARPA money, what the ARPA money was expended on, any federal dollars that you got and what that was spent on. And do you have any other additional dollars left in your budget, so that we can talk about this in the work group, okay?
Okay,
Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner, on the 50 million that you got that's in the governor's budget that is proposed for you, that says it's from Corona State Fiscal Recovery Funds. That is not from ARPA, is it? That's from other funds that is that from the first round of dollars that we got in from the federal government? Because it doesn't say American Rescue Plan.
Go ahead, Michael.
Senator Austin, it is in fact ARPA dollars. The ARPA money came out in two pots. This is not the CRF money. This is ARPA money, but it's designated two different ways. The state gets more discretion with one pot of money over another. This is coming out of that more flexible pot of money that specifically allows the development of affordable housing as an eligible activity. So it is ARPA money.
And if you could please get me where was that the state, wherever that came from, the language that is relative to that would be helpful.
Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner. We appreciate you coming. Do you have any final comments, ma'am?
No, thank you very much for all the support that we get for the department.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. You guys have a nice day. Up next is Commissioner Bartolomeo from the Department of Labor. Commissioner, if you want to make a couple of opening comments and then stand ready for questions.
Sure, thank you very much. Senator Austin and Representative Walker, Senator Minor, Representative France, thank you very much for allowing us to be here with you today. I'm really pleased to be here today in support of Governor Lamont's proposed FY23 budget. I'm here with some of my team. I have Deputy Commissioner Daryl Dudinsky, Deputy Commissioner Mark Polzella, Legal Director Heidi Lane, CFO Chris Levine, UI Tax Director Michael Lucente with his team Belinda Alita and Carl Gazzardi. Thank you, and you have our my submitted testimony, so I'm happy to participate in questions.
Thank you very, very much, Commissioner. Commissioner, the legislature as a whole and the governor signed on for $155 million from ARPA to go into the unemployment trust fund. Representative Walker and I have talked about this with you, and you indicated that you had $200 million from the unemployment trust fund, not ARPA dollars, but the unemployment trust fund that went to pay down some of the unemployment trust fund money that was borrowed from the federal government while we were in the middle of COVID with the unemployment issues. Have you released the $155 million that the legislature and the governor approved under ARPA to continue that pay down of the unemployment trust fund?
Thank you for that question. So there's a little bit of detail in there. First, I'll start off with answering directly. I don't have the 155,000, so it's not something that I released.
155 million.
150, sorry, 155 million. I don't have that in my coffers yet. So what we have done, you referenced payment. So the loan itself has been $848 million. And we have paid, as of now, $300 million. That comes from the employer tax payments that we've received during this time. And so the current balance on the loan is almost $548 million. So that's what's been paid. The ARPA, the 155 that the legislature dedicated towards the trust fund, has been analyzed and reviewed many times. It was found that it would save employers $27 million on their SUTA, that's their state tax, to pay the interest on the loan. So by putting 30 million of the 155 ARPA to the interest to save the employers their state SUTA, and then putting $125 million into the trust fund loan principal, is how the distribution of the 155 will be done. And it saves $27 million for employers, as opposed to taking the entire 155 and putting that into the principal loan.
So that would be true, except for the fact that if we pay before February 28th, and we put that in the budget in ARPA to be paid out. So my question to you, let me just finish that sentence, that we put that money in the budget to go out. If it's paid by February 28th, we will pay less in interest by simply paying that $155 million. And the legislature is interested in another $100 million going in, which gets us to pay down a debt. And I know you weren't here in the 2008 timeframe.
I was where you are, though. I heard that.
Yeah. And we ended up being the last state paying this down. We're really concerned about this. And the fact is that the legislature voted for this to happen. To make any changes to that, delta of money has to come back with language for the legislature to vote on again. And that has not been recommended by either your agency or the governor in his budget release. And so I'm a little concerned that we put something in the budget. We all voted on it. It was a bipartisan deal. In many ways, it was bipartisan because of this $155 million. So I'm a little concerned about that. I just want to ask you to respectfully ask the administration to release those dollars. Just saying.
Yeah, so Senator, I think what you mentioned as the analysis that you have definitely varies from that which we have. And if you'd like, I do have my tax experts on the call with me that can speak to it. The language in the bill was the 155 into the trust fund. And in fact, this is for the trust fund. It's for, we did multiple analysis. We did.
I understand that. I'm just saying we voted on something. And we voted on something very clearly talking about the legislative intent. And when we have legislative intent on something, we expect that that is going to be carried through. So I understand you have people on it. I'm more than happy. And I know Representative Walker and I are more than happy to talk to your people. Legislative intent on $155 million should be should quite frankly be obligated and should be what we do, because we all voted on it for that reason and spoke on it on the floor of both the House and the Senate, and many people talked about this. So I'm not criticizing you. Please don't take this personally. We voted on this. You have no authority to change what we voted on. And it was very clear that the intent was to pay down the unemployment trust fund loan that is out there. And so I'm more than happy to talk to people, but we voted to release that money. It really needs to be released. If someone wants to talk to us about it, they should have made a recommendation in the budget book. It was not made. And so we really need to get that money released no later than February 28th, because that changes the interest payment too. And I don't need your people to talk about it today. This is really, and I'd be happy to set up a meeting with them because I know other people are going to have a ton of questions on a lot of other things that you do. but this is something that we put in the budget, we voted on it, and it's kind of a little bit disturbing that we could put something in the budget and not have it obligated. So I'm just asking you respectfully to ask the Office of Policy Management to release the funds so you can put that down on the unemployment trust fund loan. So I appreciate that. So, and if you want to call Susan Keene, she'll help facilitate a meeting with your people on this issue.
Yeah, that would be a
then,
great idea. I think there could be a
then
lot
I think you should ask for another 100 million to pay down more of the, yeah. I think you should ask for another 100 million to pay that down. Representative France, I saw you had your hand up. I don't know if we lost him, but he had his Representative France. Representative Ferraro.
Thank you, Senator Austin, and I really thank you for your comments regarding the UI Trust Fund. Republicans did join Democrats in that vote. That was one of the two compromises we made in the compromise budget, that and the ECS formula as well. So if and when that meeting takes place, would really appreciate the opportunity for members of my side of the aisle to sit in that meeting. And thank you for all that you've done, Senator, with regards to the budget and being our watchdog. I do have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Please go.
9323.
Am I okay to go?
Yep, you're okay to go, sir. Yes.
Okay. And thank you, Commissioner, for being here. One of the questions I have regards the $30 million allocation for temporary staffing. And my question would be is, since this is a temporary staffing, how do you see this $30 million allocation for this type of staffing as a method of solving the problems we have at DOL?
I don't know exactly what you're referring to is about solving the problems, but I can speak to the 30 million. So, we stood up during this a contact center, as I believe that a consumer contact center, and it was something that unfortunately back in 2016-17 had to be eliminated because there was not the federal funding to sustain it. So we stood that up using the CRF and that kind of temporary funding. The general fund allocation for that is expected to help us to continue to have that resource available.
You may want to go out.
To have that resource available to continue the contact center for staffing, for the technology, for the continuation of the systems. And then in addition to that, there are also areas that we need and we know that we need to have more focus on right now. So for instance, the appeals areas, the lower referee, the higher authority. So we'll also be using some of that funding to get through that kind of bubble of the backlogs. And we're looking at durational referees, for instance, and other staff in those areas. So it's incredibly important funding, and it helps our ability to continue to serve claimants for their UI needs.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I have a number of questions here, but I know I'm allowed two, so I'm going to skip a couple of the other questions and move forward to this other question and hope that my colleagues pick up on some of the other issues that I'm concerned about. But I'll ask you regarding the fringe component of these salaries, the $30 million in salaries. Who pays for those, for the fringe component?
Well, as with any funds coming directly from the state and that are not federal funds, that would be through the comptroller.
Yes, exactly. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Representative. Next, Representative Nathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a chair switch here. Wanted to say thank you to the commissioner for coming today, and I echo my comments made by our Senate co-chair. You know, it was a little concerning, and I'm looking forward to resolution in that because it is very material and really affects the our finances. Really just wanted to get an update from you on the new system, IT system that you've been putting in place for claiming for UI and other things. I know we had some delays with COVID, and we were a bit behind last year when we heard from your agency, and I just wanted to get an update on where we are with that.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Representative Dathan, since you were the third person to kind of mention this, I just want to say, if I might, that, you know, I think we do need to have a conversation about that funding for the trust fund, because I'm not sure the analysis that you all looked at. I know that the OPM and legal and attorneys and the governor's office interpreted the into the trust fund as, you know, trust fund payments, interest, it's trust fund. So I don't think there was any disrespect intended from where I sit and from what I've heard. And our analysis, very clearly, we've run 4, 5, 6 of them, does show that this saves employers $27 million by doing it this way. So I'm just not sure if I'm hearing from you folks that you think it's actually costing more. So I would love a chance to have more conversation on that. As far as the technology, I think you're referring to the what we call UIM, the Unemployment Insurance Modernization, or Reemploy Connecticut. Reemploy Connecticut is how this system is branded, and we are doing very well and on track for that. We have continued our work nonstop around the clock. We have been bringing DAS bits into the conversations and the work that we're having very intensely in the last couple months. We even had like a little summit with them where we made sure we were all on the same page.
Please mute your, thank you, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And so we are right now in the process of just getting into, we need to do a lot of outreach and education for the community. We are working on training for our staff, and we will be launching this new system in July. And if you'd like more detail, I have Daryl Dudinsky here, deputy, who can certainly give you more. I just don't know how much you'd like at this point in time.
Really just wanted to hear when we expect this whole software development exercise to be finished, because I think what we had heard, and I want to say the 2019 session, that it would have been done by 2022, I think. I see Representative Walker nodding.
It was actually due for May of 21, and the pandemic set us back 13 months. So we are waiting and very excited, and it would be a huge relief for all of Connecticut.
Okay, so if you can just let us know what the new timeline for that is, that would be really, yeah, okay, great. And then also, you don't have to go into it today because I know we're short on time, is really to talk about how we're going to market this. I think one of the successful things that we saw in the pandemic was when videos were done, it really helped the community to really understand how to apply and saved us all a lot of questions. I know probably every single legislator on this call received dozens of questions from constituents on filing and issues. So really want to make sure that with this system, we are making sure and we're empowering people to really understand how it works so that they can make their claims smoothly and get a response quickly. So that's all my questions for today. Thank you.
We do have a multi-pronged initiative at communications and outreach, and we're in the process of making that happen.
Thank you. I just want to ask a quick question before I go to the next legislator. What is the $3.4 million reduction in the workforce investment boards?
It's not in the Workforce Investment Boards, Representative Walker. It's in the Wioa funding that comes to us. And I think in these books it says WIA, but it's the Wioa funding. Every year we get an allocation from the federal government. What happens is they tell us early in like the winter what it's going to be as an estimate, but then by the time it comes through, sometimes it's different. So this is a multi-year readjustment to align the ins and the outs to line up with what we're currently getting.
I mean, I just noticed that just a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic, we were at 32 million or so for that line item, which I thought was divided amongst the regional workforce boards or the programs that they did. So this is just an adjustment. So that's going to adjust the dollars that go to the regional workforce boards. It's not.
No, I'm sorry. I don't think I'm explaining it correctly. So this is the total Wioa Title I funding that comes to us. And then
Yes.
You're right, there is a significant portion of that goes out to all of them. And then there's some other things as well. So for instance, last January, we were told how much we would be getting. And then by the time it came to us, it was $3 million less. The feds had estimated, but then what they sent in was less. So the budgets are typically done with, an estimate, and then what the feds send us ends up being different. So the funding has gone anywhere from like 36 million a decade ago down to like 29 million recently, and is going back up a little bit. So this really is kind of an accounting measure, if you will. If Daryl Dudinsky maybe is able to speak to that a little bit, or actually Mark Pizzella.
That's okay. You could. We're short on time. You can bring it to the work group, but I'd like to know who is getting the money, and I'd like to know what the regional workforce boards are getting. And if you have other pots of money that they're getting, I want to know where they are and are they sustainable? So that would be my request on that. Senator Kushner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to flag for appropriations and for the Department of Labor that we have had discussions about the overpayment issue for folks who were overpaid unemployment. And we know that that's a large number. We did have a meeting with the commissioner about this, and we so far have not come up with, we have not heard from the Department of Labor or from the Office of the Governor precisely how we might address this issue. But it is an issue that needs to be flagged, and we all need to be well aware of. We have constituents, all of us, who received overpayments. We understand that there is a waiver process. We also understand that this is all guided by federal legislation and federal requirements. So I'm not saying this is all, we can't address all of this through the Department of Labor here in the state, but we do have to address how we're going to solve this problem for our constituents, because I know I have a constituent that I've spoken to the Department of Labor about, worked at Dunkin' Donuts, has a bill of $30,000 that needs repayment to DOL, to the Unemployment Trust Fund. That's just not doable. This woman at $25 a month will be paying off this debt for the rest of her life. And I don't think that's what we want to do to get people back on track and to get people back, living a good life here in the state of Connecticut. So it's a big issue. I don't have a proposal to put on the table or a dollar amount, but I just wanted to flag it for everybody in appropriations.
Thank you, Senator Kushner. Do you have any other questions? Thank you. Representative Harrison.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. The temporary staffing allocation, does it speak to a systemic issue, or how will retirements affect the plan?
Rep Harrison, I'm not sure I fully understand the question, because it seems to be two different things. The temporary staffing, are you referring to the 30 million? And
Yes.
then the retirement is totally separate?
Yes.
Okay. So is it a systemic issue? It's an issue that began with the pandemic. So it's an issue that began when we did not have a call center and when the virus and the health and safety protocols forced us to close our personal access to people getting assistance in the American Job Centers. So then we stood up a contact center. We hired temporary staff. We're in the process of having some of those folks who've been with us long enough will have the ability to move into some permanent positions as they're becoming available. But we still have a need to continue the contact center. Federal funding, the way in which the model for our funding is, it does not allow us to have enough to continue a contact center through federal funding, which was done years and years and years ago. This funding will be used to keep that contact center up and running. The temporary piece of it, I think, is because it's been temporary staff who have been running that, but temporary staff who have been staying on and we've been grooming them and who are finding spots in the agency. And now we need to bring in more folks. So that's part of that 30 million. The other part of the 30 million is to address the increased need because of the pandemic and the 1.5 million applications we received, the 628,000 claims that we've had are now going through the appeals process, some of them. And so our appeals numbers have skyrocketed. Plus the paid family medical leave appeals are also residing within that same body. So we've taken that on as well. So we have been needing to staff up in both levels of appeals. And the way we're doing that in many cases is through durational positions, because it is kind of a bubble, right? We've got all of these appeals from the pandemic. So at this point in time, that will help us to get those processed and get back to a much more reasonable time for the appeals. That's the 30 million. You asked about retirements. I don't know if you want me to go more specifically into that. I'm sensitive to time.
Okay, well, I know we have the retirements. Do we have any plans, or is there the ability to take some of these temporary people, move them into some of those jobs that people are retiring, and that helps to reduce the backlog and the cliff that we're facing?
So as far as the retirements, and I'm just careful of using the word backlog because I was using it for appeals. I don't, the retirements right now, we've had about 60 or so folks that have either retired or submitted their paperwork to retire. And I expect I'm probably going to have another 10 to 20 or so. And those will be retirements, through April through June. We have also are posting for some durational positions coming up. I am very pleased to tell you that, yes, we will have the opportunity for many of these folks that have been working for us temporarily to apply for these other permanent positions with retirements and such. That is something we've worked on very hard for the last, 9 to 12 months with Department of Administrative Services so that we could broaden the required qualifications for some of our first level job entries positions, because they have been historically very much geared towards staff that came into an agency and grew up throughout the agency and have spent time. So the classifications are very narrow. For instance, you need to have 5 years of unemployment insurance experience. Well, I don't know where you get that except for here. So what we've been able to do with this group of folks who have come in without needing those requirements is we've broadened the job specs to include time in the agency in those temporary positions to help you qualify. So it was a long effort and worked closely with DAS, and it's actually, we're finding it to be very successful, and our temporary staff are, many of them, eligible for the permanent positions that we're posting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Harrison. Senator Kushner for the second time, quickly, please.
Well, something did come up during your response, Commissioner, and I did apologize that I didn't thank you for all the hard work you guys have done throughout this pandemic. And I always like to recognize that before I ask a question, so I apologize for that. But my question goes to the appeals. You mentioned that there are a significant number of appeals, and you referenced the paid family medical leave new implementation. Can you tell us how many, I have two questions, how many appeals you have for the paid family medical leave act? And go ahead.
I can tell you it is just a handful.
Dante, Commissioner, if you couldn't let her finish both questions, and then we're going to have you send them in.
And the second question relates to the unemployment overpayments. There is that appeals process for a waiver. It would be helpful for us to know how many people have appealed the overpayment and what the results of those are, not person by person, but generally, if they can be grouped, and how many have already started the repayment process. I think that would be helpful to us.
So if you could send those answers to Madam Administrator, we'll send them out to everybody. We're going to try to get back on track with our thing, with our case. Do you have any other questions, Senator Kushner?
No, thank
Chair
you.
of the Labor Committee.
Thank you very much. I have a bunch, but I'll hold them until the next time we have an opportunity.
Well, if you want to put them in writing to Madam Administrator, she'll get those answers for you. And then we can get them out to everybody on the committee. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
May I say one thing, Madam Chair?
If you want to wrap up now, that would be great.
I do. I want to wrap up the one thing. So Senator Kushner, thank you very much. Yes, we have been having lots of conversations about overpayments. We will get that information. I'm just concerned to leave one thing you said out there hanging, and that was that the department hasn't gotten back to you about this overpayments and waivers and legislation, because we had really a lot of conversation about it. I think we may not have been able to give you the answer that you were hoping for, and that we would like to continue to look at creative solutions with you. But I just didn't want to leave out there that the department hasn't gotten back to you, because I've been in those meetings.
Okay. Would you like to make some wrap-up comments, Commissioner?
Oh, we're done with the whole thing?
Yep, we're done. Yes, so it was only a half an hour. That's why.
Okay.
So
no, but thank you all very much. Thank you for your support of the agency, and we will certainly get on track and in line when it comes to the trust fund and the ARPA.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate all your hard work. We look forward to talking with you in the subcommittees. Up next, we have a commissioner from the Department of Economic and Community Development, Commissioner Lehman. If you want to just give us a couple of opening comments. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions for you, so we have your written testimony. Sir.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Good to be here again, Senator Austin, Representative Walker, and the rest of the committee. We are an agency known for our brevity, so I'm going to keep it very brief. I do want to make some introductions, though, at the outset here. We have a new Deputy Commissioner, Paul O. Robertson, who just put his video back on. Paul started last week and will serve as deputy at DECD and is already having an impact. And then also with me is Deputy Commissioner Alexander Dom, who has taken on increased responsibilities at the agency. We have Kyle Abercrombie and others as well that are helping out. But Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, we're happy to go right to questions and get right into it.
That would be great, Commissioner. I have Representative Walker, followed by Representative Ferraro.
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair, and good to see you, David. How are you and all your team and everything? I'm going to go right to. We have been over the last few years setting aside funds for minority businesses, and I would like to know what are the status for the funds that we've done. How many grants have we done? I would like to know if we know where the grants are, and how much money is still left in that, and who was responsible for keeping that data?
Sure. So a great question. A couple things here. There are a couple different pots of funding, how I think about this, and we'll provide all of this data as a follow-up as well, Representative. But the 25 million that was allocated for the Minority Business Revolving Loan Fund, of that pot of money, 11.3 million has been dispersed across 600 loans to women and minority-owned businesses. There is 11 million that's remaining that's still available for lending, most of which is at HEDCO at this time. And of that 25 million, there was 2.5 million that was for administrative expense. So of the 11.3 million that was lent already, 5 million of that was during the pandemic and forgivable loans. and the balance of it is the standard HEDCO program. And the standard HEDCO program is roughly a $55,000 average loan balance. In addition to that, though, during the pandemic, as this group may recall, we did bridge loans, and a significant number of those, Representative, also went to women and minority businesses and distressed municipalities across the state. I believe we provided that information last year, but we can re-up that to give a holistic picture.
So you haven't done any this year, I take it?
No, well, I'm giving you cumulative numbers. So the
Okay.
loan program was just during the pandemic. The minority business revolving loan program I referenced at HEDCO, the 25 million, that's been since 2017. And then the last thing I think is worthwhile noting is we are in the process of what we call small business support, which will be 150 million over 5 years. And of that, 50% will also go to minority and women-owned businesses, as well as distressed municipalities. We plan on rolling that program out here at the end of the first quarter, possibly the beginning of the second quarter.
Okay.
So in terms of what has happened, and that is what will happen, Representative.
Okay, so you're going to give us these data. Yep. And when you break it down, would you break the women and then the minority? I really don't like that grouping, but I'd like to know women and minority separate. Sure. And you said that there was 2.5 million that was given to HEDCO for administration. How many people does HEDCO have a staff for?
And I want to be careful, it's not all HEDCO. So HEDCO works with SAMA and BBA as well. So there's a consortium of community groups that are sharing some of that administrative money. I don't have HEDCO staffing offhand, but it's multiple groups, but we certainly can get that to the committee.
Okay, because when I heard that sort of, I was told that SAMA only had about 3 people on their staffing in SAMA. I mean, not SAMA, in HEDCO. I don't know about SAMA, and I don't know about BBA, and I don't know what their role is in this. Seems like there's a lot of people that are in the administrative component, and that's something that I think we'd like to know a little bit more detail about.
100%, we should do that. And that 2.5 million is over a 5-year period. I want to be clear on that. And there is some delineation of responsibilities between HEDCO and SAMA that we can take as a follow-up.
Okay, all right. Well, that would be helpful because we've talked about that in a couple of other areas. The other, I'm going to wait. Thank you, Madam Chair. I may come back if I have time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Walker. Representative Ferraro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, Madam Chair, to the Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I have a question regarding the $2 million allocation for fiscal year 22 for direct flights from Connecticut to Jamaica. My question would be, if you could explain to me how this taxpayer investment will yield a return to the state of Connecticut.
Sure, and Representative, thanks for the question. Good to see you again. So the 2 million that's been afforded in the budget, or in the governor's budget, I should say, that serves as a revenue guarantee. So, we need to think about this in a way where, how much of that in a base case scenario is likely to be utilized versus the benefit of having, more flight crews, more travel, more activity in and around Bradley Airport. We have done this as a state in the past with Aer Lingus, with the flight to Dublin, and the thought would be, not all 2 million will be utilized, and I think that's fair in the base case scenario based on some of the modeling that CAA has done, and then you're going to see increased activity with the increased airlift that's going to generate economic value to the taxpayers relative to the expected cost of the insurance policy.
Thank you, Commissioner. And since you mentioned it, what is the status of the investment in extending the air service to Ireland?
We are not doing that at this point in time. I can get you a more extended answer than that, but that is not something that we're contemplating at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ferraro. Representative Dillon, 2 questions, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Commissioner. I have a couple of questions I'll probably ask in the work group, but I did hear a lot from my district about some news reports that New Haven is no longer considered a distressed municipality because of the formula that your department has chosen to use. And I promised that I would ask your department publicly so that people could understand what happened.
Sure. Thank you, Representative. Great question. I appreciate it because we've been asked this before, and I think it is important to get it out there. The algorithm or the methodology that's been utilized for distressed municipalities has been consistent, I think, for almost 2 decades, if I'm not mistaken. And there's many variables and consistent weighting in that methodology. And in New Haven in particular, I think a lot of the growth, the population growth in particular, made New Haven, I think, number 26 on the ranking of all municipalities, and the top 25 are what are considered distressed municipalities. So that said, and we can take you through the specific map behind that, but consistent framework, and because of some of the population growth, that is what pushed New Haven out relative to the 25 that are considered distressed. All that said, my understanding is per the statute that municipalities, even when they exit for a period of, I believe, up to 3 years, can still be benefit, 5 years, thank you very much, can still benefit from the treatment of the distressed municipality as it relates to the state. So we can go through it in more detail, but that is why, but in the near term, it should not and will not impact New Haven in terms of how they or their businesses access funds that are available for distressed municipalities.
Are you all set?
Thank you. If you could put something in writing and provide it to us,
Sure.
It might restore some confidence in the administration. I've been hearing a lot about the pressures, and I won't dwell on it any longer, but something in writing would be real helpful, and whether what the implications are. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
100%, Representative, we will do.
Thank you, Representative Dillon. Representative Ferraro, you have your hand up. Do you have another question, sir? Or
No, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate it. I'll remove it. Thank you.
thank you. Senator Hartley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioner. Thanks for being with us again for another round. So, a lot has been going on. Things are moving very rapidly. I think as we convene in our smaller work groups, it would be very helpful to the Appropriations Committee, in particular the Subcommittee on Conservation and Development, for you to put together for us a summary of all of your new programs, the dollars allotted, the launch dates, what has been expended, and what has been taken from what pot to underwrite these particular programs. And so just off the top of my head, we've got SBX. We want to understand what's in SBX right now, what's been recapitalized. It's a revolving loan fund there, so you've got money coming back in. I'd like to take a peek at what those numbers are, aside from the numbers that we just put in the budget. And then we've got, programs such as the Connecticut Challenge now, Communities Challenge. We've got the Innovation Corridors going on, and we've got the Connecticut Investment Fund. So, those are big ticket items. We need to know the dollars on those and the dates, just for starters, so that this committee can, begin to have this in some kind of a summarized form. And amongst my number of questions for you, and I have to respect Madam Chair's guidance here, I would like to know on the hospitality. So, everybody's been slammed. Hospitality has really been slammed in restaurants. And so they're coming to me again and saying, look, we've done the outdoor dining. We're hoping to continue it. We've tried to shoulder through this, but what do we see coming at us? And is there more need for us to do some kind of, bridge programs with regard to this sector?
So thanks for the question, Senator Hartley. I think the short answer is there may be. I think, though, and I've had this conversation with Senator Austin, but for the benefit of all here in the public, the $30 million of hospitality support that this group voted on and passed, rightly so, last year. We are in the process, we DECD, we're actually working with DRS right now on what is the framework with which that money is dispersed. And our intent is just to disperse that as soon as possible. It will be a very data specific process again, and we want to make sure all of the data is there and that the pipes are in place. But we feel we can get that money out to the hospitality industry quite quickly, and we're working on doing that. So that money is there. Stepping back from that, if there's a need for more money, I think what's challenging at this point in time is, what is a cyclical change or an impact to a business versus perhaps a structural change to a business. Zoom, for example, how much business travel is going to happen, when and if conventions are going to come back. So I think we as a administration and the legislature as well, from my perspective, I just want to be very judicious in terms of if we're allocating more money into what might be a structural headwind here. So my perspective is, let's get this 30 million out the door. Let's continue to reassess if there's a greater need for state funding. Clearly, the federal funding, the feds are not providing more at this point in time, and we're in a very inflationary environment. So if there were to be more funding, I think that may help some, but it could be at the expense of others. So my view is we should be careful. We should get the 30 million out the door quickly and then reassess.
So I'll just comment and before I say thank you, and we'll get into this a little bit more deeply in our next round. And so you talk about using metrics and having this based upon actual data. So I'll ask you to think about then, how does that translate, for example, into the state's work with on arts and culture and grants? Because we, I think we've got to talk about that in terms of data and metrics. It's the same conversation you just had about hospitality, but it does translate to this sector.
Agreed.
So you'll give us your proposal in our next round?
On the 30, sorry, when you say next round, on arts and culture, Senator Hartley, or you going back to hospitality?
Yeah, arts and culture, because the same conversation that you just had with me about hospitality applies to arts and culture.
Yeah, I guess the distinction is, so certainly happy to have a conversation around arts and culture and how funds there have been and should be allocated. On the hospitality, there's a very clear 30 million allocated, where there needs to be a framework in terms of how that money ultimately is dispersed. So it's a bit different, but on the arts and culture, we should have the conversation, and we'll have the conversation in terms of our thoughts on disbursement. It's just there's not a pot of money, 30 million or otherwise, or on the arts and culture side right now that still needs a disbursement framework.
Except for the fact that there's line items, and so there is an aggregate number.
Correct, but there's line items. I mean, as you just said, and that's the difference. Whereas
right, and so my question is, are they based upon metrics?
That this may be a bit of a circular conversation. My understanding is they are, but ultimately a lot of those line items are coming from the legislature and from some of the from the entities that are receiving those line items. So we can go through the metrics. It's not a full rateable scale as I understand it, but there is some bucketing that is based on metrics, Senator. But certainly something to discuss further in the working group. And we should get Liz Shapiro in that conversation.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. I'm thinking you must be a lawyer.
Me? Not at all.
Silver-tongued. Okay, thank you. Bye.
You know me well enough now, Joe.
I just want to say it was funny when you said, I agree. And Senator Hartley was like, okay, where do I go from here? That was great. That was a good moment on camera. So thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just jumped right in. I want to go back to, and I started with the issues about the minority businesses, loans and things. I'd like to know a little bit more in the working group, what metrics you use to determine which ones are successful and which ones weren't. And then I'd like to know, have you dug in to find out why the ones weren't successful? And in most of these cases, these were all loans. What makes the difference between being a loan and being a grant? Because I know I've heard the term grant with many people that get funding from DECD. So how do we make those? These are things we can talk in the group. But how do we make that determination where we go from grant to loan? And I'd like to understand that, but how are we now following up with the ones that were failures? What are we doing to improve that market of businesses that are just basically starting out and doing it. And we have to look at how it branches out to that throughout the state, because I get a lot of calls from areas from like Bridgeport and Stamford and New Haven even about trying to get into those pools, but I don't hear a lot of it. So that's why I'd like to know where those are in those discussions. So that I know you agree.
Well, we should, no, I'm saying I'm happy to respond, but I see the deep teams here and it sounds like you want to take that as a follow-up, but we should go through the data. Headco has a lot of it. And then we should talk to representative in terms of this new program prospectively, which will be, much more significant size-wise.
Well, I mean, my one question I will ask is, why did we go out of the state to get somebody to manage the dollars as opposed to somebody in Connecticut? And when we want to have as much money stay in Connecticut?
Well, so all of the loans will be in Connecticut. So you're referencing NDC or National Development Corp?
The group that's overseeing it is out of Connecticut. So I mean, we have agencies we can do here.
So Representative, it's a national group that's doing work in New York, in the southern states, in Washington. They do have an office in Connecticut as well. All of the money and why we went with them is really three main reasons. One, we believe they'll be able to have one-for-one matching dollars, and no one else supported us that. So 75 million in state dollars, they'll get 150 million in lending. Secondly, they have very capable technology where every lender, whether you're in Bridgeport, community lenders will all be able to utilize the NDC tool. They're not a lender themselves, so they're not competing with lenders. They're an apparatus with which lenders can use. All of the dollars are going to stay in Connecticut. So it's a combination of leverage and technology, and the fact that they're actually, think of them as an interface, like a marketplace of sorts that everyone can use. They're not crowding others out. So for us, it checked all boxes in terms of why we went with them. And we think it'll be mutually beneficial for Connecticut-based lenders to use this framework.
Okay, all right. Well, I look forward to the conversation.
That's right. More to follow up on that. We'll take you through the math there.
Thank you.
I think it's compelling.
So don't go anywhere, because I had a couple questions and I was getting everybody else out. Commissioner, thank you very much for the hospitality numbers and looking at getting those dollars out. Some of that was for hotels and motels, and some of it was for transportation. Are you looking at the transportation numbers also relative to that?
Yeah, our intent is to do that. I think, Senator, as we're trying to look at NAICS codes and clean ways with the data, given how many small businesses there are in the state, what transportation businesses are, I don't want to say discretionary, but more focused on hospitality versus non-hospitality focused transportation. Right. But I think we're trying to cast, our intent is to catch as wide a net as possible under the definition of hospitality per the language from the legislature, and then really to focus on revenue impacts, businesses that still were impacted by COVID in 2021 versus pre-COVID in 2019. So we're going to be as broad as we can be and still capture good data is how I would think about it. And
for the governor put a grant in Arpa, I believe it's in Arpa, might be in carry forward, relative to helping out different venues across the state. Last year, we cut out the for-profit industry, those that in theory make money. But I'm suggesting that we reconsider that and open up those free passes to people to go to not just Mystic Seaport, but also to some of these other industries which have been negatively impacted, and see if we can get people to go to some of those places which not only were negatively impacted, but didn't have anybody coming to them because the free passes were going to other organizations. And we kind of, in a way, picked winners and losers in that respect. And so I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, so great question. Happy, I think the feedback was very positive on what was the Kids Summer Free, or what started as the Kids Summer Free. Happy to have a discussion about expanding it, and then again, how you define that box. Because if you have a very broad view, obviously the cost would be significant, and then there's a question on implementation, but understand the point and happy to discuss.
And then lastly, before we let you go, Senator Hartley talked about metrics for the line items that were in the budget relative to arts, culture, and tourism. Actually, it's probably not the last question. My understanding in talking with Liz the other day that there is data now available for the arts, culture, tourism line items that we can now review. And we didn't put it in to review it during the second half of the biennium, but the legislature will be looking at that data for line items next year.
Okay.
And so I just want to make sure that everybody realizes that we are looking at that data next year for line items. So there will be some adjustments relative to those line items. I wanted to make sure that we put that out there. And my very last comment is relative to statewide marketing. I still don't think we have enough money in for statewide marketing. I continue to push that, and I continue to push the agency to ask for more money in statewide marketing so that we can market Connecticut in areas that can get here in a day's time frame and spend a weekend at the variety of beautiful places we have around Connecticut. And so I just want to put that out there so that we're not just marketing in Rhode Island and Massachusetts, but upper state New York, Canada, Vermont, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, those places we should be marketing our state. I'd really like to make sure that we are doing that component also.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you want me to respond, Senator Oster, or not.
I don't. I just want to put it out there. I'm just asking you to consider putting more money in.
Happy to have a follow-up conversation. I do have a view on this as well, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
And sir, if you would like to just make a few closing comments.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. It's good to be back with everyone. Look forward to being in three-dimensional room with everyone on this, but a lot going on at DECD, as we just talked about, a lot of data that we need to get back to this group with, and look forward to our continued collaboration on all the initiatives that we're undertaking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for your time and for your team's time. And now we're going to move on to the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and we have Commissioner Dykes up. Commissioner? As you can see, we've had robust questioning across the board. And so we're trying to stick to a somewhat of a good timeline. It's really not happening. So if you could start off with a few comments, and then we'll get right into questions.
Absolutely, Senator Austin. I think you're an admirable chair in terms of keeping the focus and moving quickly through a lot of substantive information in a short period of time. So in that spirit, I want to thank you and Representative Walker, Senator Hartley, Representative Dathan, Representative Nolan, Senator Minor, and Representative France for the opportunity to be before you today. I won't introduce all of the members of my team at this time, but to the extent that there's a question that they're helping with, I'll introduce them then. But you have my written testimony, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And I remind my colleagues to put their hands up. I would like to talk a little bit about some of the things that we have done. We extended the fishing season last year. Is there any will to extend the fishing season again this year?
That's certainly something that we found was really helpful and appreciated by many anglers across the state. So we are looking forward to continuing that practice. I'll introduce here our Bureau Chief for Bureau of Natural Resources, Rick Jacobson, in case there's any additional updates there. But it's something, maybe a silver lining of the pandemic in terms of our embrace of that practice.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Senator Austin. Yes, we have implemented year-round fishing. That's follow-up to the public act that was passed during the last legislative session that did away with a closed season for trout fishing. So it is open year-round. We are in the process of promulgating regulations that'll make all of that more seamless. But the short answer to your question is yes, trout fishing is open year-round.
And the shoulder seasons relative to camping, would that be you, Rick, or is that somebody else?
Somebody else.
That would be Mike Lambert from our Bureau of Outdoor Recreation.
Hey, good afternoon, Senator. Yes, we are planning to have a full operational season for our campgrounds this year.
And do you allow winter camping in most sites or not in any state sites?
Most of our areas, pretty much all of our areas are basically during the season, during the recreation season. There are a few group camping areas that allow winter camping, but primarily we are open Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Because probably many years ago, I went winter camping in the Kent State Forest. I don't know if we were supposed to be there, but we were there. Nonetheless, it was actually a wonderful experience, and I think that it's something that we should consider, because if you have the right equipment, winter camping is a great experience. So I just want to put that out there.
That is one of the benefits. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
No, just saying that we do allow backpack camping year round, but I think this is one of the great features of our park system here in the state of Connecticut, that we offer 4 distinct seasons. And so we're always looking for ways to help people enjoy the parks year round.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Reyes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Dice, good to see you. I asked a question earlier in a different committee, and it comes back to deep. So I'm very interested in the tree planting programs for the municipalities, and I wanted to make sure that somebody from your office follows up with me. I think it's the forestry grants that the DEEP is involved with. Am I correct?
That's correct, Representative. As a result of the Governor's Council on Climate Change, one of the recommendations really focusing on urban forestry. We know that many of our cities actually have some of the lowest rates of vegetation, tree cover, even on a national scale, and that is particularly pronounced in low-income neighborhoods and communities of color. So we were really pleased to revive our urban forestry grant program, utilizing a small amount of our RGGI, Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative proceeds. Because we know that lack of tree cover creates a heat island effect for those communities. So we're really thrilled about the response to that program. I believe we're on round 2 of those grant programs. We've seen a major uptick in interest in the program compared with the last grant round. We've led a series of grant writing workshops to help applicants navigate the process, and we're helping build capacity with more local groups that can help with the tree planting. So we're delighted to follow up offline to share more information about that particular program, and also about the urban forestry focus as we brought on new staff in our forestry division to help implement this successful program.
Appreciate that, Commissioner. And we've had many conversations about environmental justice, and this plays right in that arena. And it segues into my next question. As DEEP is concerned, how much funding, how many dollars actually goes into the environmental justice pool, or into that type of ideology?
Well, we're excited that from a staffing perspective, we've been allocating positions and to replenish the staffing and provide more staffing resources within our headcount into the environmental justice team, including an office director position that we're hiring for currently. We have been able to, but I think to give you a full accounting of all the work that we're doing across the agency on environmental justice, I would point to things like a grant or a contract that we've done with UConn to enhance mapping of vulnerabilities across communities, so we can better identify metrics for overburdened communities that align to where we're doing program spending. We have some really innovative programs going on with federal support. I'll point to our Air Bureau, where we're looking at utilizing new technologies for monitoring and enforcement related to air quality, including mobile air quality monitoring project that will really help target environmental justice communities. We're looking at air quality monitoring program that we can help support with a small amount of RGGI dollars, also to try to leverage federal funding from EPA that is becoming available in this area. There's a whole host of different funding. I just highlight these as a few examples of different things we're doing across the agency, pulling on federal funds, staffing resources, RGGI funds, and others to help enhance our approach to equity and environmental justice across the agency. But happy to follow up with you on that. I think it's really timely given the federal infrastructure money that's coming, and the Justice 40 focus of the Biden administration that will be at the forefront of how we're positioning to secure federal dollars in our state.
Commissioner, thank you. You're spot on. And we will absolutely follow up, because I think EJ, into everything we do, and think should be the way we operate from here on out. So thank you for your work in the committees. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Reyes. Representative Harrison.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, thank you. Commissioner, I hear from constituents all the time about the upkeep of the parks. And I see that we have ARPA dollars that are allocated to improve the infrastructure and do something with the upkeep. And I would like to be able to go back to them and give them some information back. What's the plan? What we can expect? Parking? Are we going to employ people, summer help that used to traditionally happen and help to keep up with the upkeep? So if you could just give me something about the plan.
Delighted to have that question. I think that, on Monday, I had the pleasure of joining Governor Lamont down at Sherwood Island State Park, where we highlighted this proposal in the governor's budget to provide for $25 million recommended for ARPA funding towards infrastructure projects across our state parks. We welcomed 13 million visitors across the state. We're responsible for the maintenance of about 7% of the land area of the state when you add up our state parks, forests, wildlife management areas, and so on. And we have a significant backlog of maintenance projects and capital upgrades that are needed across those facilities. If you think about the more than 1,000 buildings that we maintain, whether it's a maintenance shed for our staff or a castle or some of our historic buildings that we have across our state parks. So in addition to $25 million for ARPA funding, there's also a recommendation in the governor's budget to increase the bonding authorization for deep infrastructure, again, for these types of improvements, adding an additional $15 million in authorization, in addition to the $15 million that was approved in last year's budget for bonding for deep infrastructure. So all told, that's $55 million. Just to give you a flavor of the types of projects that this could go towards, we kind of break this down into 4 categories. A significant number of projects that would be across the state that enhance the visitor experience. That includes improving our toilet buildings and bathhouses, improving pavilions that have leaking roofs, visitor centers that are, need to be upgraded. We have a category of ADA renovations, ADA accommodations that we're overdue to provide for at boat launches and other facilities across the state, improving swimming access and swimming pond improvements at Wadsworth Falls, for example, and some of our other swimming areas. State of good repair is another kind of category that I would highlight here. We have, again, in order for our staff to be able to provide for upkeep of these facilities, we need to have maintenance facilities that are up to code and storage buildings and so on that are ready to deploy equipment and enable our staff to work effectively. So that's another category. And then I would also note that we have a number of historic buildings. When you think about Hebeline Tower, the Harkness Memorial State Park, a number of these different beautiful buildings, but they do come with a unique level of upkeep and investment that's needed in order to keep them in good repair. And so that's another category of projects that is included in our list. But all told, I would say we have about 45 different projects, major projects that we've identified that we need to fund across our state park system. And I would adding it all up, it's probably about over $100 million worth of repairs that are needed. But this $55 million would be a significant investment.
Briefly, I'm listening in on
I'm sorry, Commissioner, they muted the person. Representative Harrison, do you have any other questions?
Well, I'm happy to hear what you're saying. I'm also curious why we don't charge for out-of-state visitors, which is very similar. I go to parks in other states and, in-state is one thing. And in our case, we choose to make it free, which I applaud. But what are we doing to maybe offset some of these costs, especially and maintain maintenance, especially after ARPA funds go away, by charging for out-of-state visitors?
Another great question. So we do charge out of state. We have a long history of charging out of state visitors at kiosks at our most popular locations where we see a lot of visitors coming. And we've done that for many years, including at our shoreline parks, for example. But I've also heard from a lot of legislators about, other parks across the state where we don't have in-person fee collection, about the need, and seeing a lot of out-of-state plates and thinking about where's the fairness and equity in terms of those out-of-state visitors contributing to upkeep. So during the pandemic, our innovative parks team has started to roll out a new system of to be able to charge for parking for out-of-state visitors through an automated payment system where people can log on to a website and make a payment similar to how many municipalities are doing for public parking. So we've just started that program. We've done it in the middle of a pandemic. So, we're still working out and enhancing the effectiveness of it, but we are working towards making that out-of-state visitor fee collection something that is cost effective, but can be deployed across all of our park system, again, to ensure that we're getting that contribution from out-of-state visitors, as well to some of the costs of maintaining our beautiful system of parks and forests.
So I appreciate that. Thank you. I think where my concern is and what I hear from constituents is that, because this isn't happening, they're shut out of these parks and, really these are their parks and I think we need to do something. Thank you.
Thank you,
Happy to
Representative
follow
Harrison.
up. Yep, thanks.
Thank you, Representative Harrison. Senator Summers.
Yes, good afternoon. I have a few questions that I'd like to ask, and if you can't answer them, you can get back to me. But I'm really excited to hear about all the proposed improvements and maintenance of our parks. But I represent a town that is probably about 50% state park in the Patchogue State Forest, and I'd like to know what you're going to do for helping them with enforcement and issues within the state parks, because there has been a disproportionate burden placed on some of our small towns that do not have the equipment. They don't have the funding resources to get into issues within the state park. When there's an emergency call, they're the first responders. The econ police, as you know, I've been working with Deputy Trumbull, and you can't sometimes find enough coverage. You don't have enough staff. So I think we have 5 or 6 in Eastern Connecticut, which is a huge amount of territory to cover. But I can't tell you how many calls, especially during the pandemic, that I would get from my town saying there is a party in the middle of Patchogue Forest with 400 people with bonfires, marijuana, and drinking, and no one's there to respond. Every weekend, there's issues on the lakes. And these small towns that don't have police departments, they're forced to call the state police, which have to take the priority of a fatality first, rather than go to an issue in the state parks. So I think it's great. We're improving our state parks, but I'm really concerned about the enforcement in the state parks. It's a huge issue. And, if DEEP can't find the enforcement or can't hire the individuals, then what can you do for the towns that are then the fire departments that are, responsible for responding to the issues? And I also would like to know what your plan is for Seaside, which is a thorn in my side. What's going on with that? DEEP has taken, I believe, the lead on that. What's going on? What's the plan? And also, I will have a bill in because I think it is something that needs to be addressed on our wind proposal. When we were on the Environmental Standards Committee, everybody on that committee wanted to have a mitigation fund set aside for either species or commercial fishermen that would be displaced or could be displaced because of the wind farms, yet that was taken out of the RFP. That's something that everyone on that Environmental Standards Committee would like to see added going forward to any future purchase power agreement. So if you could answer those, and then I can put the rest of mine into writing, that'd be great.
Thank you, Senator.
3 questions. I'll try to be very brief and then follow up offline. I do appreciate Senator Summers. I know you've been a very vocal advocate for your community in terms of the need for enforcement and support for all of the issues that come up in managing the public across our various state parks and forests. So I appreciate, I know that Deputy Commissioner Trumbull has had opportunities to meet with you and others on our team to come out to Patchogue and meet with you on several occasions. I'll just say broadly from a statewide perspective, I could not be prouder of the hard work that our Parks Division team, including our NCON officers, are providing across the state. We have a small but mighty team when you think about the number of acres that we're responsible for managing, even when we don't have a pandemic going on. And of course, I think folks are very familiar now with the positive trends from the pandemic that saw a 50% increase in visitors at our state parks. And of course, that also came with, along with it, some of the challenges of managing issues related to, the public. We did see also a significant increase in the number of calls for service that our NCON officers were responding to. And so I think we've been very nimble, and our team has worked very hard within the resources that are allocated for our Parks Division and for NCON to try to be responsive to those situations and also to work effectively with local law enforcement. I'm going to go to your other 2 questions, but if there's time, I just wanted to have Mike Lambert say a brief word about the NCON Ranger program, just to bring that. I think that deserves just a moment in terms of spotlighting how we're being creative and trying to work effectively with our limited resources to provide additional support for NCON. But just to go quickly, with respect to the wind proposal, we have resumed the quarterly meetings of the Council on Environmental Standards. I know that the mitigation fund was something that was discussed in there. It was part of the RFP responses that we received for the offshore wind projects back in 2019. Happy to follow up offline in terms of the legislation, Senator, that you're contemplating related to that topic. With respect to Seaside, we are actively looking for federal grant opportunities that could be provided to help us bring Seaside State Park up to the same level of quality and standards and amenities that the public enjoys at our other shoreline facilities, including addressing the very unique and historic but deteriorated buildings on site, improving the beach, as well as providing for restrooms and other accommodations. So we've been actively working with a consultant to develop a proposal. We think that there are some federal opportunities that we could pursue that would help us to move this forward, and happy to, again, follow up on that one. I'll just pitch quickly to Mike Lambert on the NCON Ranger program, and then happy to work offline. Mike?
Thank you, Commissioner. Senator, yeah, we are, I think we had discussed this previously, but we are working to expand our seasonal NCON Ranger program. We had a pilot program last year, found that to be very successful, primarily along our shoreline locations. We're looking to expand that inland. It's a highly trained group of seasonal rangers that are able to assist with traffic control, minimal enforcement, and other measures there that we feel greatly assist in many of these more remote locations. But as the commissioner indicated, we have a very busy police force with the NCON, and we're looking for any efficiency we can to better support the statewide needs.
So, Senator Summers, did you get the answers that you were looking for on those 3 questions that you had?
Not really, but I can follow up after. Thank you, Mr. Lambert. I know that you guys have gone above and beyond, but it's a much bigger issue than than is being, I guess, highlighted here today. But we can discuss that offline. Thank you.
And Senator Summers, if you could send your questions in writing to Madam Administrator, she will send them over so that the whole committee can get the answers. That would be great.
I will. Thank you.
Thanks. When you send those questions, those answers over, Commissioner, can you give us the number of NCON officers that you have?
Sure.
And sort of where they're deployed? And And if you have any openings relative to NCON officers, that would be really helpful. Because Senator Summers asked that question, but I had it on my list. I'd really like to understand that. And do you have a demo list of buildings that are being demoed around?
We can provide an update on that as well. Yep.
That would be perfect. And it would all go to the administrator of the committee. And I have a question relative to water quality. So water quality in our lakes and ponds and invasive species. And I'm wondering, with all of the money that we're getting in particular, when we, and I appreciate us putting anything into infrastructure. I remember when you and Commissioner Klee came to the campground right up the road from my house a number of summers ago at the on Scotland Road in Baltic, giving out s'mores. I appreciate that, but I'm wondering if any of the dollars that are available, this $50 million, $55 million, could help out with the number of ponds that have significant influx of invasive plants and is impacting the quality of that water and impacting the depth and breadth of those water bodies.
So I think that as we look at the backlog of infrastructure projects across our state parks and those facilities, I think that is what was driving and we anticipate would be the focus of the $55 million for the including the Arpa funding. But we also recognize the importance and the strong need among municipalities and others for addressing aquatic invasives. I'll just invite Graham Stevens if he wants to speak to this one briefly, and we're happy to follow up offline in terms of any additional support or approaches that we could consider there.
And if you can send me what you would need to work on that, that would be helpful, because we would, or bring that to the subcommittee, because I'd like to understand what we need in real dollars there. Mr. Stevens?
Senator, good to see you. Good to see everyone. So with respect to, water quality on our lakes and ponds, obviously we have data with respect to, many of our lakes and ponds and how those fare with respect to water quality. And I would say with respect to the bipartisan infrastructure law, there are significant numbers of different pots of money that are available. Many of those pots of money, some of the federal agencies are still developing guidelines and guidance on. There's not anything that's specifically targeted to aquatic invasive species control within lakes and ponds, but we do think that some of the bigger pots of money with respect to water quality improvements may bear out as a source of money for some of these initiatives. So I would think that we should continue together to look for money to try to maximize the amount of money that we can bring to Connecticut to improve our water quality. So great question, thank you. And we can follow up offline with other ideas as well.
That would be great, because I think that that's extremely important for us to address this issue. Commissioner, we talked once a long time ago relative to Pitney, help me out, money that comes in on helping out with a variety of different projects. It's federal dollars that come in. Pitney Robinson, I know one of you guys knows the name of this grant.
Pittman Robertson.
Thank you. How does one find out how much money is coming in? Or why don't you just bring into the subcommittee the amount of money that comes in for this program, what it's used for, and how it's dispersed? What is the mechanism for accessing those dollars?
We're happy to follow up with the subcommittee on that, unless, I don't know if anyone, Graham or otherwise, wants to chime in, but we'll be happy to follow up on that one. Rick?
Yeah, we can follow up afterwards, Commissioner, or I can offer some insights now. The Pittman Robertson and the Dingle Johnson funds are two federal aid funds that were created by Congress in the 1930s and again in 1950. The funds come from an excise tax. On the Pittman-Robertson side, from excise tax on firearms and hunting-related materials and ammunition, from the Dingell-Johnson side on fishing-related materials. Those funds are put into a trust fund held by the Department of Interior, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, distributed to the states by a formula for the express purpose of wildlife restoration and sport fish restoration. They have very explicit rules on how those funds are to be distributed and used within a state. There are quite a laundry list of ineligible activities as well as eligible activities. Connecticut's been benefiting from those funds since the 1930s and again in the 1950s with each expansion. And the sport fish restoration account was just reauthorized through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, simply the vehicle by which Congress reauthorized it. But that's what the funds are. That's how they come to us. That's what they're used for.
And Rick, if somebody wanted to get a project, as long as it met the eligibility, how would that happen? How do you get notified of the projects?
Well, the majority of those funds are used to fund our existing programs and have been funding our existing programs in sport fish restoration. We hold some parts of those aside to do special projects at times, but generally speaking, they are what fuel our sport fish, our cold water fisheries, our warm water fisheries, our habitat programs, diadromous fisheries restoration, et cetera. They are the engine that propels us. It does require a 25% match on total project costs, which is effectively a third of the federal dollars coming in. We have to match with non-federal funds. And we do that through the general fund appropriations that we allocate toward eligible activities under the federal rules. Not all of the general funds that come to DEEP for fisheries work are actually expended on eligible activities under the federal rules. So not all of those general fund appropriations can be utilized as match. It gets pretty down in the weeds pretty quickly.
But I'm okay with getting down into the weeds, so to speak, especially when we're talking about some of the projects and you know, there's always water quality too, because some of those are weeds too. But I do want you to bring some things to the working group. One is, what are we going to do when Mira closes down? And what is the plan? I don't think a plan is to ship our waste out of state. That to me is not a smart environmental issue. I had heard at one of the conversations that the administration had relative to Mira that the garbage was going to be sent to Eastern Connecticut at the Preston incinerator and the Lisbon incinerator. And I have visited both of those facilities, and Lisbon most recently. And I happen to know they're at capacity, according to them. So I'm not certain that that's wise. And so that's something if you could bring, what is the state's plan relative to Mira? I think that either way, whether it's a cleanup now or restoration now, which I know is not what you have planned, Commissioner, but has there been an analysis of what the brownfields cleanup would be for that site?
Yes, thank you so much for that question, Senator. And it's one that we've been hearing from a lot of folks. And, you know, we've certainly been actively engaging and thinking about and working with municipalities on what the strategy can be to move, you know, for the state with the impending retirement of the Mira facility. We have great leadership in the Environment Committee and across the legislature who've also been active in helping work on, you know, advancing tools that municipalities will be able to use to try to minimize reliance on out-of-state landfills associated with the closure of the Mira facility and the loss of that capacity. I'll note, for example, you know, strengthening the organics diversion requirement for commercial generators, which is a big spur to anaerobic digestion. development in the state, which is can be a clean option to help us address the food scraps and organics, which makes up 1/3 of the waste stream in our state. There's a bill that the agency has asked the Energy and Technology Committee to raise, which would enhance investment in anaerobic digestion, as well as provide for grant funding for municipalities for food scrap collection, pay-as-you-throw, recycling programs, again, that can help to lessen the tax burden associated with managing municipal solid waste, reduce the total amount of tonnage that has to be sent for disposal. We have also been successfully implementing a sustainable materials management grant program. Thanks to support of the legislature, this is funded with $5 million in surplus. Last year, it's oversubscribed. We have more than 50 towns that have expressed interest in participating in these grants. I'll highlight that Meriden has been the first out of the gate with $40,000 in funding from DEEP for a co-collection pilot that they have launched this month that we're watching very closely. We have about 30 towns that are interested in following the Meriden model, which could provide for a cost-effective way to reduce the amount of municipal solid waste tonnage and affordably divert organics to the quantum biopowered digester in Southington. These are in aggregate a number of different steps that are, again, if deployed by municipalities, will help to chip away at the total tonnage that's sent for out-of-state disposal. I will also note that to your question about what the state is doing about MIRA, or when we think about decommissioning costs, when we think about the what is put in place for managing disposal for the MIRA towns after the facility closes, as well as a whole host of these different questions. These are questions that we have here at DEEP. MIRA is responsible to provide an annual plan of operations to DEEP that is a tool for us to be able to help answer questions like the ones that you're asking. But we haven't really received any, MIRA hasn't been complying with that submission. We haven't seen a robust submission of a response of what their annual plan of operations is. We are pleased to see, the board is getting replenished with new nominees coming onto the board. It's a critical time for leadership from the board. But I would submit that as we'll be happy to provide insights, at least to the extent that we're informed on what MIRA's plans are. We're happy to share those with the committee because this is so critical statewide. I would also recommend that the committee hear from the MIRA board because they are the ones that have the responsibilities and the information associated with how they're contemplating those decisions associated with their responsibilities.
So thank you for that, Commissioner. A couple of those things that you mentioned relative to pay-as-you-throw and some of the others have been widely panned in most communities. They don't want to, they just don't want to do them. But as you and many of the people in your agency know, I've been working on a large anaerobic digester in Eastern Connecticut, and also am very much interested in a food waste digester in Eastern Connecticut also. So those are two things that I think are important. I know people are not going to drive to Southington for food waste disposal, so we need something at this end of the state if that's going to happen.
I would agree, and I would just say, DEEP, we've been working to streamline the permitting and make the permitting less burdensome for siting and building new anaerobic digesters around the state, because having anaerobic digestion capacity in close proximity to communities all across the state is critical to reduce the transportation costs associated with food scrap diversion. To your point on pay-as-you-throw, I recognize, a statewide directive on pay-as-you-throw is not viable, but the legislature embraced, providing incentives and support for municipalities to implement programs like that or food scrap collection programs in a way that is tailored to the needs of their communities. And that's where we've seen 50 towns express interest and provide us with initial expressions of interest in adopting those programs, which we're supporting through the Sustainable Materials Management Grant Program. So happy to share more information on the impact of that program offline.
And again, anything that you share, if you would share with the administrator, because she gets the information out to the whole committee. But lastly, I personally want to thank your team. still more work to do, but recognizing the fact that we gave the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection a state law to make sure that we were taking care of Native American reservations on our state recognized tribes was not being done, had not been done, and is now actually being done. I appreciate the work that they've done. I'm actually going to invite them down to the other end of the state for one of our tribal nations, and I was there this last weekend, and so I think that that was very helpful to have that happen, and I wanted to extend that thank you.
I think I can't let you say that without just reflecting back to you how grateful we are for your personal support and interest in this, in helping us provide for better infrastructure for the tribes. It's an important part of our responsibilities, and your personal engagement in championing that has been really impactful. So thank you, Senator.
Thank you. And I think Representative Dathan, you have one question?
I have one question. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about the anaerobic digesters. That's really phenomenal. Really, my question has to do about I know we've talked in the past about the mosquitoes and the Tripoli and the spraying and some of the control that's needed to happen in the state. And was just hoping you could spend 30 seconds talking a little bit about that.
To be efficient, I'll probably pitch it directly to Rick Jacobson. I know that we have have run an effective program, working together with our sister agencies, and happy to provide just a thumbnail sketch there, and we can follow up.
Can you rephrase your question just so I can get a little clarity on what?
Sure. I'm just in the past, we've gotten updates in this committee about the mosquito control, and especially in light of climate change, we're hearing a lot more species that are coming up. Also invasive plant life that's hurting, hearing a lot about, and just want to hear what we're doing to one, look at the invasive plants, but also think about mosquitoes and what our situation is with that. And if you want to bring to the working group, that's fine, because I know we're low on time.
Well, I can address your question pretty quickly. We have had to redesign the program to some degree, and we're focusing the vast majority of our effort on managing coastal habitats such that they will be less conducive to breeding mosquitoes. That's the surest way and the most cost-effective way to provide for long-term mosquito control. At the same time, we're retaining our technical capacity to mobilize in the event of a public health emergency with adult spraying, if that comes to be a critical element. So rather than having a program that dealt with larval mosquitoes across the coast all summer long, we've now focused on habitat for long-term controls and retaining our ability to respond in an emergency. And we continue to work, of course, with the Department of Public Health and the Agricultural Experiment Station.
Great. And so then also in the same fashion about these invasive plants, I know I've had a couple of constituents write to me about some concerning invasive plants, particularly along Merritt Parkway, and just what we're doing to address that, kind of in the same fashion.
We typically think of invasive plants in particular in three different contexts. One is our coastal wetlands, where Phragmites is such a problem. That is part of what our wetland habitat and mosquito management program is focusing a lot of their time on, is to try to get a handle on Phragmites expansion. The other group, of course, is, as Senator Austin already mentioned, aquatic invasive species. That is something we thank you to the legislature for passing the aquatic invasive species stamp program. That's our best step forward in the near term. As far as terrestrial invasive plants go, we're tackling that as much as we can on state properties through our active forest management programs. And when we generate funds coming back to the state for forest management, we put that into invasive species control. In terms of private lands, we work closely with the Department of Agriculture's Natural Resource Conservation Service to let contracts to or grants to private landowners to control invasive species on their lands. And lastly, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act does provide some funding to the Department of Transportation. We're happy to collaborate with them to control invasive species along highway infrastructure.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you so much for that explanation. I just want to be able to respond. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Representative. So Commissioner, if you want to say a last few words, I just remind everybody that there were many areas we did not touch in. We didn't really talk about energy. We didn't talk about sewers. We didn't talk about dams. These are all other areas that your agency handles. And so I wanted to make sure that people knew that. Because I'm sure they all have questions on what we're going to do. And if you want to say a last few words.
We have a diverse set of responsibilities here at DEEP, and we're proud of the work we're doing on all of them. And we're happy for the committee's interest in those topics and the ones that we've had the chance to touch on today, and we'll be glad to follow up. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you for your team. Up next is Kelly Vlares for the Office of Workforce Strategy. Okay, Kelly, if you want to give a few minutes of a couple of points of introduction, and then I know that everybody has a lot of questions on the Office of Workforce Strategy. So everybody get your questions ready.
Good afternoon, Senator Austin, Rep. Walker, and all of the rest of you on the Appropriations Committee. We appreciate the time and the attention that you're taking an interest in the work of the Office of Workforce Strategy. I have Niall Demondo here with me to help answer any of the questions that you may have, and I'm looking forward to our conversation together today.
So you received, I might as well start off as I'm waiting for people to raise their hand as they realize that you had a very short introduction. You received some $70 million in ARPA funds originally. My understanding is that you have, is it $40 million in bonded dollars? And in this, there is another dollar amount in the governor's recommended budget. I remind everybody it's a recommended budget, not that it is not yet law. So how much is that?
The additional recommended is $15 million.
So that would be 70 million, 110, $125 million.
Yeah.
And of the dollars, we all have different concerns relative to the workforce in the state of Connecticut. And the manufacturing pipeline program used in Connecticut, first funded by the federal government, then funded by this body in the legislature, all of us, has been very cost effective. And it does not appear that the workforce strategy is operating under that same mechanism. Is there a way that you could equate the two so we would understand the dollar amount per job in the workforce strategy in comparison to some of the other programs that we have?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So we are utilizing the manufacturing pipeline framework for all of the job training programs, utilizing the 70 million Career Connect funding that's already been allocated. It would be the intention to do the same with the other. As we're putting together these programs, there's specific elements of the manufacturing pipeline program that are extremely important, and the cost of those has definitely increased due to the pandemic. So I'll walk you through that very quickly. First, we're going to be developing, and it's in process right now, a single port of entry for all job seekers and students looking for job training programs. The Manufacturing Pipeline Initiative has such a portal, and they have over 10,000 people sitting in that portal currently. We do not have anything like that statewide. So on a statewide basis, people need to go and look and hunt for different training programs that are available to them. So we're developing that front door portal. So there's a cost associated to that of a couple $100,000. We're also making sure that when people come into the portal that they get those pre-assessments for basic skills and industry recognized industry recognized pre-indicators of success. So as they get the basic skills testing, if they are deficient, they get remediation. We believe that we're going to have more people needing remediation for basic skills because we're opening up this portal to a broader scope of people. So that will add some expense there. We're also making sure that people get comprehensive wraparound supportive services, childcare, transportation, food security, housing security, access to technology if they don't have it. We did that with the CARES Act dollars, and we had a 95% completion rate by providing those additional wraparound services. Some of those cost a little bit more given the issues surrounding COVID, and the cost of housing has gone up. We found that a lot of people were housing insecure when we did the first round of funding. So there'll be some additional funding there. We're also ensuring that people are getting those social, emotional, and employability skills training. We know that if we're taking someone who has little experience or little experience in work or have a related work experience and they need to be upskilled or reskilled, that they may need some additional help around those employability skills. So there's some cost associated there. We're working very closely with our community-based organizations to provide a lot of that support. So those types of organizations will be funded through Career Connect dollars, such as your reentry, veterans, people working with Opportunity Youth, will ensure that the people that they're working with will have seats in these technical training programs. And then we're going to be providing the technical training programs. And what we're really excited about is we're opening up opportunities on a statewide basis. So all of the programs for, say, the Manufacturing Pipeline Initiative will be available to all employers and all training providers through the community colleges. And if someone who happens to live in Hartford and wants to go work for Electric Boat, they can sign up for a program that is going to be potentially run for, say, a pipe fitting class specific to EB through the Manufacturing Apprenticeship Center. They can take that class and they can go to work for EB. We don't have that level of flexibility because currently we keep training programs and people within the regions in which they serve. We're also going to be able to get benefits of scale, especially around like IT programs. So we can run IT programs remotely and we can fill people from those positions from across the state of Connecticut. And they can be taught at different institutions and it's seamless to the employer and to the trainee. All of these jobs, just like the Manufacturing Pipeline Initiative, will be connected to a job. We'll be inviting employers into the training programs to interview participants and potentially provide conditional job offers based on successfully completing the job. The other things that we've noticed that also increase the cost a little bit is that we're having a harder time in enticing people to come back into the workplace and participate in these job training programs. So we're going to have to pay a stipend for people to participate. And that will vary depending on region and what the demand is in that region. And we'll work very closely with the workforce boards on what that stipend amount will be. But on the average, it's approximately $200 to $250 a week, say for a 10-week training program. We're also seeing that the success of the pipeline program has also been built on the on-the-job training component. So providing employers with some on-the-job training funds after employment. And so through the experience of the pipeline and EWIB and what's happening currently, they're having to pay a little bit more money because we're having to take people who have less levels of skills into those programs. So there's a flexibility what the on-the-job stipend cost is going to prevail. So the average for all of these wraparound services from the Manufacturing Pipeline Initiative is around $9,000 to $10,000, depending on what the training program course is that they're taking. Welding costs more than machining, say. But we're also adding on some additional supportive services in the front end and wraparound services to ensure that employability component so that when people are placed, they're actually going to stay in those jobs.
So I appreciate that. And if you could send us sort of a bullet point on that, that would be very helpful. I don't want all the sort of flowery verbiage per se, but just a bullet point so I can follow that down. And, you know, if we're paying for someone's housing and their food and then a stipend, I want to make sure that the money spent is actually ending up with people staying on the job that we are preparing them for, and that concerns me because I'm not certain that that's there if they're going to lose some of their other subsidies relative to housing, food, and healthcare.
We did work closely with our other sister agencies to ensure that those benefits would not be lost during this training program.
Right, not during the training program, but once somebody is hired, their job and what they're being paid has to equate to a dollar amount that allows them to not need these benefits here. And this has always been a problem in the state where we have said to somebody, you get a job, and while we helped you out with heating assistance and we helped you out with food, we're not going to do that anymore. We expect you to live under the beginning pay scales of certain jobs, and that's not always something that can be done. So I just want to, that to me is something that I'm not certain we're thinking about, and you know, and I think that's there. Nonetheless, my second, another question I have is, we don't have enough CDL drivers here. And those are vital for jobs for us to have relative to transportation of goods and services, and that is true across the board. That's true for bus drivers. That's true for beer distributors. That's true for cross-country movement of goods. That's true for grocery stores. So, do you have the CDL component within your workforce strategies?
Yes, we do. I would like to go back quickly to the first comment that you made. So with the bond dollars, right, the ARPA funds are only allowed for certain expenditures. With the bond dollars, we have a significant amount of that set aside for incumbent worker training. And the goal would be to get a 50% match from our organizations to actually upskill people who are going through these entry-level courses. Once they get on the job, provide them that next level of certification so that they can increase their wages. We're also setting up an alternative transportation fund so we can address some of those issues, systemic issues of getting them transportation to the job when it first starts. So I just wanted to make that brief comment.
And while you're there on incumbent worker training, the workplace down in the other end of the state from Eastern Connecticut does an excellent job. Is a national model. Are we using that model, or are we recreating that?
We're using models that are already existing within the state. So yes, the workplace model. We're also looking at the MIF model of incumbent worker training, where employers group together a need and they put together a class that's utilized by different companies, so it lowers the cost. So yes, those programs haven't been fully set up yet. They're conceptual, and we will be working very broadly with our partners who continue to do really good work in that area. Our goal is never to recreate, it's always to expand best practices.
And the CDL component you were going to there.
Yes, absolutely. On the CDL, so we know we're working closely with the building trades union to ensure that we have significant funding for infrastructure, which includes a project with the Teamsters for CDL licensing for those jobs that the Teamsters need to hire from. We also know that there's a huge demand of jobs outside of the unions, as you said, long haulers, short-term deliveries, bus drivers. So we have mobilized all the workforce boards. They're working together collectively to put together a CDL program in which we can fully utilize all the CDL program providers across the state. It is my understanding that we have a lack of CDL training providers, and that does put a chokehold on the pipeline of the number of people that we can put through these programs. It's difficult to expand them because they actually need to buy CDL trucks to run these programs. So it makes it cost prohibitive for us to be able to finance like the purchasing of trucks. But we are going to be fully utilizing all of the training capacity that we have in the state to fund CDL licensing.
And my understanding is that there is a very good program on the New York website that is used for CDL drivers, in particular those that we need for plow driving and other things like that. And that program is cost effective and brings in enough workers. I would suggest that you look at that one too to see if that's something that we could use. And it seems to me that you might be able to get some CDL, some vehicles relative to the Department of Transportation to look at some of those vehicles relative to that. The other day I got a call and was on with firefighters, fire chiefs. They're looking to they actually were looking for some data relative to diversity within the firefighting services. And I was looking at that the other day, and they're trying to encourage people to go into this very professional workforce of firefighting, in particular in the urban areas. Many of the rural areas use volunteers, but in particular in the urban areas, they just don't have, they're very short on firefighters. While there is an increase in women going into firefighting, there's not an increase in the minority populations. And I'm wondering, have you looked at ways to fulfill our workforce needs by especially targeting some of our urban environments to encourage them to look at some of these jobs, which are good middle-class jobs and would be done within the communities where people live?
We are working very closely to ensure that we're fully engaging community-based organizations to be able to reach people in those communities, to get them included and informed in participating in Career Connect. We do have, we will be funding, we're looking at primary funding of manufacturing, IT, healthcare, infrastructure, green jobs. But we have an other button basically for people to apply to if any of those things don't fully interest them. We have not really looked into firefighting, but that is a really great opportunity for us to do so. And we can also be including potentially some programming around that should the additional funding from Career Connect add to the funding that we currently have to work with, or if there's any additional leftover funding from the projects that we get applications for.
Well, thank you for that, because I think it's really important for us to find jobs within communities and not necessarily try to move people around from community to community. Although anybody who wants to work at Electric Boat, I'm more than happy to have them move into Eastern Connecticut because we need over 3,500 jobs just this year, and after hiring 2,000 last year. So with our casinos expanding, we need 1,000 workers between the two of them right now. So this is something that I think that we have to pay attention to. I had been on one of your, I'm not a member, but I somehow get invited all the time to be on your workforce strategy board. Don't make me a member, please don't. I let Representative Walker be the voting mechanism of that. I don't want to have another someplace where I have to be having a hard enough time being where I have to be. Nonetheless, though, I wanted to know, do you have an organizational chart that outlines the number of people that are working for the workforce strategy and the salaries that are being paid? I did ask that at one of the meetings, and so I've not seen it. It may have been shown at a meeting that I was not at, but if you could get that to us, we get all of our documents go to Susan Keene. She's our administrator in appropriations. And if you could send that to her so that she could send it out to the entire committee, that would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Happy to do that for you. The Office of Workforce Strategy currently has 4 people, so it's not a very big organizational chart, but we're happy to put that together and send it to you.
We will be having you come to our subcommittees, and our subcommittees delve even deeper into the questions that I have put out here today. And I will have additional job classifications. I'm not looking just for beginning level jobs. For example, in healthcare, it's not just about CNAs, it's also about making sure we have enough RNs, APRNs. You know, do we have enough licensed clinical social workers? These are the other jobs that I think we have to pay attention to. Although I also don't want to concentrate on college educated jobs, because we have a number of people that are looking for a job right out of high school. With the number of federal dollars coming in for Electric Boat or Pratt & Whitney or Sikorsky to help shore up our defense industry, I think that we want to make sure that we have workers going directly into those jobs and let them take advantage of increased job training once they're on those jobs through those particular employers.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's easy to focus on the entry-level positions, and we have a lot of them that need to be filled. But when we're looking at IT, say, in the funding of the IT certifications, a lot of those are kind of the entry of the middle skilled jobs. And so people are earning Google certificates and Amazon certificates, and they're going into $45,000 a year jobs. So there's some really good middle kind of skilled. We're looking for people there that might have 1 or 2 classes under their belt for college, or might have had a little bit more experience in some of those really entry-level positions like a CNA or a machine operator. And we're also, the Office of Workforce Strategy worked closely with our partner agencies and put together 2 proposals to deal with the shortage of nursing and mental health professionals. Those proposals are coming under the Department of Public Health, and they are to increase the number of faculty that are teaching nursing and healthcare professions. There's a shortage of them. So we consistently turn away students, thousands of them every year from these programs because we don't have enough faculty. We're also looking at accelerated college programs to take someone who may have a bachelor's degree and want to go into a nursing certificate and become an RN. And so there's an accelerated 12 to 18 month programs that we're working on there. And also added, what part of the proposal is for tuition for students who are looking to go into these specific fields of healthcare and mental health. So we are trying to really pay attention of the gamut of entry level all the way up. The Arpa dollars are very specific as to what we can spend them on. So we're looking at how we can use either grant funding or state bonded funding to fill in those gaps.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Again, I encourage people to put their hands up. We are getting to the end of this session, but my understanding is that that there's a group of business people down in the Greenwich area that does a lot of work with you. Do you know which group I'm talking about?
Yes, Social Venture Partners.
Yeah.
So Mark Argash is the chair of the Governor's Workforce Council. He is also the executive director of Social Venture Partners. And one of their missions is to take, really qualified professionals who volunteer their time to work on social issues. So he has several of his partners who are working closely with us. They do not get paid. They are volunteers to help push the agenda forward. So for example, we have Dr. Bernie Park, helping lead our workforce in healthcare initiatives. And the Bank of America has actually made a donation to Social Venture Partners to onboard 2 additional people, one in healthcare and one for IT, to be working to support some of the foundational work that we're doing in those industries and really engaging the business partners in those industries.
So, I appreciate that, and I appreciate anybody who wants to volunteer to help out. I get concerned because unlike business development areas, and I understand they're not getting paid, but I want to make sure that we're as transparent as possible. In particular with a group that has never been part of state government before is a little bit concerning to me, and I just want to put it out as something that I'm keeping an eye on to make sure that we are seeing value in a certain amount of transparency relative to this. And I just wanted to put it on your radar that it's something that I've had other people come to me about, and we just want to make sure that that we're understanding what the value is of having them there. Does anybody else have any questions? We're slightly over our schedule. Oh, Representative Walker's here. Representative Walker, she's been filling in for me on some subcommittee OFA briefings. Go ahead.
Yeah, I apologize. Kelly, I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to, but and this condensed, we have like 3 different committees going on at the same time. So Kathy got the beauty of being sitting here, and I bounced through a couple of them. So I apologize, and I'm sure I'll talk to you at a later date and everything like that. I know when I got on it, I looked like I had just gone through like hell, but I probably have. And Kathy, we need to talk for a little bit.
Well, thank you very much for all that you do for the state, but for your service on the Governor's Workforce Council and the work that we do together. Greatly appreciate.
Thank you. We're getting it. We're going to get it done.
We are.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kelly. We appreciate it. Madam Administrator, are you on?
I don't think so. I think she was. She sent us our public. I mean our public hearing list. 82.
We have
81.
81 people that are that we're going to be talking with this afternoon. That will be from 5 to 8 p.m. Everybody.
Well. Can I just do the math for you? If everybody talks and they're 3 minutes, it's 5 hours. So 5 to 8 plus 2 more. Maybe we'll be out by 11. Because everybody's going to say, well, I just want to ask this one question. There are no questions.
Well, we can't say that, but we strongly encourage people to think about the question they're really asking, and do they get the answer in the testimony?
No public. But have a good day. Have a good day, Kelly.
So
thank you, everyone.
Bye, Kelly. So just for the members of the committee. It starts directly at 5 o'clock. We've slated 3 hours. We'd like to try to keep it at 3 hours, but there is 81 people testifying. And Senator Hartley, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm so sorry. That's exactly what I wanted to know. How many people we have signed up? You said 80 people?
81.
And is it divided by subcommittees, or is it random as they've signed up?
Random as they signed up.
Because it's judicial as well as
Yes.
DCD, is that right?
Yes,
Yep.
it is. It's everything.
And
Everything we talked about today.
And can I just say, Kathy, there are a couple of slick ones that got in here, and it's David Fay, and it's the theaters people, and there's like 4 of them, but they're only slotted as 1. So that's saying right there that they think that there'll be 20 minutes, and they can't be. So there are quite a few that have, no, that's the only one.
Okay,
Thank you.
so we're gonna try to keep everybody to that 3-minute time frame, just so everybody knows. And we have an equally busy day tomorrow and the next day.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that. We're gonna be pushing the envelope on a number of these issues. Appreciate everybody today. You've got less than 45 minutes to eat dinner. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next Zoom.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Madam Chairs.
Liz, you there? All right. Leave.